Hello and good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Kristi here. I hope you are having a lovely Sunday. And we're going to have a little chit-chat to talk about things that are frustrating, but also, hopefully, in a funny way. So, first of all, I should take off my muted sign. There we go. Got that sorted. And hello, chat. Good morning, everybody. I see Mithril's in the chat. Eric is in the chat. Mike Bala. You had a really funny tweet on Twitter earlier today. And Lee. I hope, or it's Lee, but I'll just say Lee. How are you guys doing this morning? Oh, what a week. What a week. What a week. So I actually have show notes. I'm trying to become more professional as the time goes on. And hey, how you doing, Mariana, in the chat? Hello. I'll be seeing you guys later. For those of you who aren't patrons and aren't part of the Facebook group, there is a show later on tonight where we're going to be doing our March patron hangout, where we'll probably compare weather conditions around the globe and then talk about whatever else comes to mind. So am I clipping a little bit? I just saw myself going into the red, so I'm going to back that off a little. Show notes. Yes, I'm trying to become, as I said, more professional. So, couple things. One, you'll see, how do I find here? I added the cute dog video to the screen because that is just adorable. And the fire thing's getting a little old. We've had that since January, so I haven't had a chance to do a new background video, so I thought I would just add. I probably shouldn't have, because now I'm competing with adorable on my own show. Maybe this wasn't the best choice. But I've got the environment set up, got some new videos for you guys, that new video for you guys, and a list of things to talk about. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the show name. I asked you guys to give me some suggestions, and there were 4 great suggestions. I've been polling people on Twitter and in other places, and generally it's sort of come down to 2. The top 2 choices are Coffee with Kristi, which is with a K and a K. I like that, although there are a lot of Coffee Withs shows. So the thing that, although I like it because it does, I'm drinking coffee now, right here. Actually, this is in a porcelain mug, so it's better for tea than coffee, but it's still delicious coffee that I have. So Coffee with Kristi, it does have the nice alliterative, but it's a little bit common. Whereas the other option was Weekend Winters. The thing that I liked, so this is why I'm leaning toward Weekend Winters. The thing I like about it, it's still alliterative. It still has the sounds, the consonants going on, but it gives me a bit more flexibility. Like if I wanted to do a show on the weekday, I could just make it Weekday Winters. So you would have like a Weekend Winter show, and then if I went on some sort of traveling trip where I wasn't going to be a traveling trip, that seems a bit redundant. If I was going on a trip where I needed to, I wasn't going to be able to do a show, I could maybe do a Weekday Winters. So I'm currently leaning toward Winter's Wonderland. Yes. I think that would just open itself up for so many puns and things that would get distracting, James, but thank you. So at the moment, I'm leaning toward Weekend Winters. Yeah, that was one. Not Winter's Weekend. Weekend Winters. So, all right. Now, the other thing I want to show you guys, just in honor, it's a little hard to see with my mic in the way, so this is going to rattle perhaps. No, not too bad. All right. This is an old shirt, but it seemed an appropriate one to bring out now that Carl is deluded enough to think he should stand for Parliament. This is an old t-shirt I got back when from Woolly Bumblebee, before we stopped talking. But it says, "Anti-Sargonism is the new punk rock." So I've had this shirt for, 2 years or something now, and it seemed hilariously appropriate. I can turn this back now, so you know what it says. So yeah, there we go. And it's the thing is, it's an off-the-shouldery kind of thing, which I guess looks kind of punk. But sorry, I should look in the camera, not at the OBS thing. It looks kind of punk, but it just makes it really kind of awkward to wear sometimes. I feel a little bit like Flashback, I can't remember the song, but where she's like stomping her feet and the water is falling. That one. It feels very Flashback, this top. So I'm trying to sort of throw it back so that the dip is toward the rear, and then you can see the top bit here. And so that was a little bit in honor of the Friday night happy hour Kevin and I did, where we laughed uproariously at the Guardian coverage of the possibility that Carl might be one of the UKIP EU candidates standing if Britain is still going to participate in the EU elections coming up in May. So let me just see what's going on. So that was it. Okay, before we get down to the Mueller report, let me just have a look at the chat. Taking off that sign is a bad idea. I don't know what that is. Perfect pronunciation. Hi there, just a reminder. Smoochy Poochie. Yes. Thank you for the happy hour shout out from that. All right, you want to know where you can get the anti-Sargonism is the new punk rock. If the Woolly Bumblebee is still selling it, I got to figure out this direction. Here we go. If the Woolly Bumblebee is still selling it on her Teespring shop, then you can get it there. So you can just check Woolly Bumblebee and type Sargon, and maybe she's still selling these. Otherwise, you'll have to make your own, I guess. Greatest t-shirt ever. claps. Kristi, whatever shitty safety signs you need to throw at Sargon in his stupid candidacy. Yes. It's not punk if it's not held together by safety pins. That's true. I could safety pin it to my sports bra here that I'm wearing. I'm rocking underneath to make it look not like I'm wearing just a regular bra underneath. But anyway, so that was what you guys had to say in the chat. Getting back on now with the show. The show today, I have this as our lineup. I'm going to just briefly touch on the Mueller report because it came out, but I think it's kind of a overhyped report. And hey John, sorry, I would have to check Twitter DMs. I've been a little frantic this morning and also last night. And also, I think you gave me a contribution. I didn't give you a hug for that. So, John, just lean in. Here we go. Oh, thanks. I think it was a $2 super chat, and I gave one to HK, but I didn't give one to you. So, right, the Mueller report, and then we're going to talk about something I saw doing a little bit of research last night. It's a really good time to be watching the internet blood sports downfall because there's a lot of like just chaos everywhere as they're fighting. There's infighting and drama and all kinds of nastiness going on in the IBS crowd. One of the things also that came up when I was watching the coverage of it is a tweet by Count Dankula. So we're going to get to that. And then I also am going to spend some time in the show talking about Cambridge really embarrassing Jordan Peterson. And that's what I'm planning on doing toward the end of the show. So let's get started with the Mueller report and a little bit of a take on that. So as you guys probably know, 5 o'clock last evening, the Mueller report, well, it wasn't delivered. It was delivered earlier in the day, but the Attorney General gave the report that it had been received. Now, I have been especially irritated by the Mueller investigation. Oh, sorry. Before we go any farther, because of, we're going to be talking about Professor Peterson, I decided to dust off my Jordan B. Peterson puppet. I haven't had a chance to use him yet. And so I thought this might be a good opportunity to at least get him out here and have him do some talking. So yeah, hello everyone. Say hi to Jordan B. Peterson. All right, where was it? The Mueller report. Stay focused, Kristi. The Mueller report dropped and it was really being hyped by the media. I was pretty fed up, to be honest. I can actually bring this down a bit. I think you can see the t-shirt a bit better. I was so fed up of panels of people looking at each other saying, I don't know when the Mueller report's going to come out. Do you know when I don't know when the Mueller report's going to go out. Nobody knows when the Mueller report's going to go out because he never leaks. So what do we know? We know nothing. And just been hours talking about the fact they didn't know anything. They didn't know jack when it came to anything in the report or what it was going to contain or what was going to happen after or what they... And so there was so much hype about its delivery that almost inevitably, when it landed, it was like a damp squib because we've known from the start, if you've been paying attention anyway, or the media should have mentioned this more often, there was never going to be an opportunity to see what was in the report when it was delivered. Ever. Ever. So why was this so... I mean, I understand that its delivery was important, but surely, what would be more important is when the Attorney General releases his version of what was in the report, or his report on the report, or if he released the report itself. And so what really now is annoying me is I was watching, people's reactions. Some people's reactions online were like, oh, well, Mueller didn't deliver an indictment of the president, therefore this was some sort of letdown. The Department of Justice rules that he's operating under don't allow him to indict a sitting president. So it was never about that. It was about the 30-plus arrests, indictments, convictions, and guilty pleas from individuals and companies and Russian freaking spies working with the NRA and Russian hackers. So to pretend that this report somehow isn't the thing that we were waiting for because it doesn't provide for an indictment of a president, which he can't do, the framing of this has really got me irritated. The other thing that's I'm finding incredibly frustrating now is all of these Monday morning quarterback progressives who are yelling at the Democrats for not doing more to investigate Trump while the Mueller investigation was already going on. They only got power in January, and the fact is that they have to proceed in a certain way to gather the facts, assemble the facts, create, understand, or, build the narrative that they think connects the facts, and then ask people to testify in order to get the information out in public. So, I'm just, this Monday morning quarterbacking of crapping on Democrats for not doing more while Mueller was doing his investigation. The whole point of not treading on Mueller's toes was to keep the lines of inquiry and investigation very clear. That Congress has its role, but because Mueller was pursuing original, information and crimes and data and creating original indictments based on criminal behavior, Congress got out of his way. And now that he's delivered his report, I feel like people are turning around to the Democrats saying, why haven't you been doing more all this time? Like, they weren't doing more all this time because there was an active investigation going on. So I'm not a violent person, but, the whole like Batman, Robin, thwack, I just feel like doing that with a whole panel of people on talk shows because they're just being stupid. They're trying to find, in my opinion, some way of crapping on the Democrats because they feel like they need balance because the Republicans are fascist traitors who actually don't like democracy, who are pro-oligarchy, who have no respect for one person, one vote, who do want to regulate women's bodies, who do want to put religion. They're just so bad that, the media thinks that by saying terrible things about Democrats that aren't accurate or true or appropriate, that's somehow balance. And it's not. All right. I had a lot of pent-up frustration about that. I kind of went off a little bit longer than I thought I would, but clearly I needed it. All right, before we get on to Dankula, we'll do a little detour. RuPaul. For my mental health, I've been taking a bit of a politics break. And I think I told you that in one of the happy hours, I mentioned that the day after the New Zealand shooting and watching, again, all of that coverage, the same coverage I remember from the Tree of Life Synagogue, from the Aurora shootings, from the Pulse nightclub, from Vegas, from, the high school, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but that process of there being a mass murder and there being then the coverage of being the event, then the coverage of being the chaos, then the coverage being people who are witnessing the event, speaking to the media, then the next step is that the police start to release information about the victims and you get stories about the tremendous people that were executed and trying to honor the victims by paying attention to them and their lives rather than focus all of that whole thing that as Americans we seem to have to do every 6 to 8 months on a national scale. But the New Zealand thing was pretty rough, so I watched some Queer Eye on Netflix, which is just like chicken soup for the soul. The Fab Four just makes me feel so much better about humanity. And kind of in that vein, if you like this, if people who like this show watch this other show kind of thing. They said they recommended RuPaul's Drag Race. Now, I'm not that much into competition types of shows, and sometimes it takes shows a little while to get going. But there were 7 or 8 seasons on Netflix. I'm like, okay, well, if it's 7 or 8 seasons long, it must have been some sort of popular, so I'll check it out. And I've, farm girl, Wisconsin, rural areas, I have basically 0 to no experience of drag culture. So binging, I started with season 6. For those of you who might be fans of RuPaul's Drag Race, I started with season 6 and I'm now into season 7. And the fascinating thing about the show for me as a political scientist, or one might say a sociologist, is that you, by experiencing an entire season, I definitely felt more of a deeper understanding of the complexities of drag culture, and it is a culture. Like it's a way of being. There are norms, there are expectations that people might have. There might be some, gatekeeping going on or whatever. You have this, with gun culture, like that's identity politics. Gun culture is identity politics, just like, anything else. And here you can definitely see a rich tradition. I mentioned it a little bit actually to Kevin after our last happy hour, because Kevin is so into puns. He really likes to play with puns and use puns to make jokes and have, to make jokes and have a bit of a witty laugh. So much of drag performance, I see the influence of vaudeville. I see the influence of that sort of old-time TV show one-liner, a lot of sexual innuendo, and not even just innuendo, just straight up, like dick jokes. And watching it, it was a bit of a culture shock for me, because when the contestants are their drag selves, they look so different from how they are out of drag. There's also a lot of fluidity in gender pronouns. So you can call someone she, within that drag community at any time, but also you can say that they're man. So it was really fascinating for me to kind of immerse myself. And obviously it's constructed because it's a TV show and they need to have some drama. But I really enjoyed the process of getting to know the contestants as in their drag selves and also in their out of drag selves, and how the psychology of it, how it often helps people feel more confident, and the common theme that the drag queens who are participating enjoy the glamour. That's something as a woman I can really relate to, and I could see where if you have an enjoyment of doing your hair and doing your makeup and the artistry that goes with it and the way you kind of lift your head a little bit higher when you feel a bit glamorous, and the fabrics against your skin and all these kinds of things, I could identify a genderless pleasure in glamour. And so seeing the culture, drag culture, embrace that or work with that, or sometimes work against it, react against the typical, very cis-normative notion of what a drag queen is. There's, and this is the other thing about a culture. One of the contestants in season 6 she was a very unusual drag queen. Milk, if you remember from season 6, Milk, more than the other contestants, really pushed the boundaries of drag. In 2 instances, one could say, I recall Milk transgressing the norms. One of them was early on, Milk dressed up in a very, beautiful dress and everything else, but wore a beard. So it was sort of like a woman, with a beard, and very sort of androgynous, or, kind of indicating different signals. And people were very taken aback by that. Like, why are you wearing a beard? You're a woman. There was also later on in the drag queen, RuPaul's drag queen race, where they had to do an homage to RuPaul. And the various contestants took RuPaul looks and from different dresses, different videos, different runways, or whatever else, and adapted them, made some sort of homage. Milk came out in a tailored suit. Because if you watch RuPaul's Drag Race, RuPaul will dress up in drag, but RuPaul will also show up completely bald, no makeup, glasses, in a very nice, usually very brightly colored, tailored suit. And there was a huge reaction by some people to the idea of wearing pants on the runway, or to present as a boy or a man in drag, how transgressive that was. So that to me was, I didn't plan on talking about this long, sorry guys, but that was to me very fascinating, like an insight into how, what is feminine, what is drag, what is masculine, what is androgynous and genderless, and where the different generations are inside drag culture. And it's all, of course, like very much bound up with men, so having all of this, watching these debates and gatekeeping and contestations within that within that culture for me was really fascinating. So if you haven't checked out RuPaul's Drag Race, and this at all intrigues you, then maybe go check it out. It wasn't drag racing cars. No. So good morning to Dorian. Good morning to, oh my, that's unusual. I already said hi to James. Who else is here? Niall Fleur. Hello there. Emma. I'm just going to say Night. E-Night, you're in the house. If it's still on Netflix, you might want Skin Wars. Okay. Body painting competitions. Oh my. All right. So what did Mike say? There's some sort of link that that John put into the chat, and a Gibbs head slap delivered to the back of the head with reasonable force. Oh, Gibbs from NCSI. Yeah, I got that reference. I don't watch a lot of American television that much, but NCSI did make it over enough episodes where I got that reference. All right. Let's talk now, since we've been going for a little while. By the way, the cute dog, is that annoying or is that just adorable? You guys can tell me if a 1 minute clip played over and over is a little too short to be on here for very long. But I wanted to get going on some of our stuff. I'll just show you this because there's no reason to, let's say, hide what we're going to be doing. Here's a transition. Here we go. What? All right. These are the bookmarks. I've been curating content for the show here. So let me find out a couple things. Just going to shout out there Steve Shives appearing with Anita Sarkeesian from Femme Frequency. So hurrah, Steve. I'm really, really pleased for Steve. Steve is one of the hardest working people in YouTube. He takes his craft very seriously. He puts out content consistently. He has a level of professionalism that I honestly don't see from a lot of people. Hold on, I just noticed there's some dust. I have this new Swiffer thing, so now whenever I see dust, I get to clean it. So I'm like, sorry, my keyboard's a little bit dusty. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Better. So yes, love to Steve. You're awesome. We're gonna look at this in a second. Stupid Jordan Peterson. Standards. This is from Phil Moriarty. We're going to look at this. And, all right. Come on, let's find the Dankula stuff. All right. I don't know if I'm going to be able to look at this or not, because I am technically, I'm blocked by Dankula. So I can't, he's so sensitive, he blocked me. But I think if I click on this, it'll show it to you anyway, if I just double click on the tweet. Oh, maybe not. It did show it on my phone anyway. But, let's see. I think I can show this to you on my incognito account. But what it's basically is, it's Dank saying that he woke up in the morning and his account, his bank account had 800, dang it, I'm really sorry, guys. Count Dankula sent out a tweet saying that he'd woken up in the morning to learn that his bank account had 800 pounds deducted from it, and the citation was like an arrest order. So he had this whole plan where he was not going to pay the fine that he owed the people of Scotland for his grossly offensive content posted on social media in order to get a huge audience for his calls to exterminate a religious group, the Jews. As if it were a joke to say that because you put a pug next to you. He was going to do the whole martyr thing. I'm not going to pay. I'm going to go to jail before I pay this fine. Why? Because he's an attention whore. He really wants more attention, right? He also has raised a ton of money off of this conviction, claiming he was going to fight it all the way. And he couldn't really fight it if he paid his fine. So I don't know what he's going to do with all this money now. But anyway, he made a big song and dance about not paying the fine. And then the government is the government. They can just garnish your wages. They can just, they're the government, so you just can't say, oh, I'm not going to pay this and then I'm going to get away with it. Just like if you don't pay your credit card, eventually your creditors are going to come after you. There's going to be liens against your property. They're going to start garnishing your wages because you owe people money. And they just took it. They just took the money out of his account. He claims, I had no warning. I'm going to bet they actually sent him notices saying, you need to pay your fine. If you don't, this is going to happen. And he didn't read it. That's my guess. Because I would be very surprised if the Scottish government didn't have a policy about notifying people that they had to pay a fine, that they were late for a fine, and give them some warnings. And Count Dankula, I don't trust that he's smart enough to open all his post and read every word on the document all the way down. Maybe this was a super secret double probation extraction of cash from his bank account, considering it said arrest order or arresting order on it. It's not like I don't think they invented it for him. I think this is just what they do when people refuse to pay their fines. He's refused to pay it. He had to pay it anyway. And it's just stolen his thunder. So now he wants to try to appeal, but of course it's going to be much more difficult for him to justify all of this money that he's raised. What, 40,000 or something ridiculous, for an 800-pound fine when he was guilty. He was guilty. He was guilty of breaking the law. All right. Mike, you screen capped the tweet. All right. I'll check the replies to this. Okay. Wow, look at this live interaction. Let me see. Go down. Aha! Thank you, Mike. Yes. So this morning, this is Count Dankula. This morning I checked my account and see that 800 pounds has been seized from it under an arrestment order. I wasn't given any notice of this. I don't believe it. I was prepared to go to jail for what I believe in, but you realized you fucked up and you really just wanted me to go away, didn't you? No, they wanted you to pay your fine, you, bum. You're I feel bad saying bum. You were avoiding paying what you owed to the people of Scotland, to the community. That's not making you go away. It's called your debt to society. So what else he said? There are still, this is a little bit, I have to blow this up. Oh, no, I don't know why it's making it smaller. There are still avenues to go down for the appeal, and all you achieved was making millions of people realize the damage that authoritarian laws that restrict human rights. Oh my God, what a whiny little baby. It's 800 pounds. You got off lightly, you bigot. Can do to the population. I stood ready to get locked up for freedom of speech. You blinked. No, they didn't blink first, Count Dankula. They went around your bitch ass. That's what happened. They went around you because you were being a man-child and they had other avenues. They weren't gonna let you use them to profit off yourself. What a scumbag. I mean, Count Dankula is really not smart. You watch his appearance with Kevin Logan. He seriously sat there with Kevin talking about Trump, saying the Democrats should just give Trump the funding for his wall. And Kevin asked, why? Why would the Democrats ever, what motivation do they have to do that? What interest of theirs do they fulfill by giving Trump money for his wall? And Count Dankula replied, well, it was one of his campaign promises. Like, you moron! The Democrats don't exist to help Trump accomplish his campaign promises. Are you drunk right now? Are you high? Do you understand how politics works? And this guy is like one of the better of the shitlords of the UKIP crowd. And he's so dumb and uneducated and uninformed, and he's so unserious about politics. Everything's a laugh. Everything's a troll. Everything's a joke. And that is the sort of attitude that lets fascism slip in, which I guess is his aim because he puts out Nazi propaganda and calls it humor. All right, so let's see what the chat has to say about this. I'm sure Scotland James Russell says, I'm sure Scotland would like him to bugger off, but not without paying his fine. Yes, possibly. Mithril says, my free speech. Eric Taylor, 800 pounds is a very expensive speeding ticket. It's just a very expensive speeding ticket. Yeah, it's pretty tokenistic in terms of, it's a slap on the wrist, really. John says, but James, Creationist Cat, totally supports punching Nazi animals. Yeah, that might be, I think there is a Creationist Cat video like that. Alyssa says, last time I watched Kristi months ago, she didn't curse like this. I like this. I try not to curse as much in the Sunday morning because inevitably the happy hours are demonetized. And I'm trying to, not beg you guys for money. It does help when the content itself, I can put some ads on it and then I can just I have like $1,000 a month in student loans. So I definitely find it helpful to supplement my regular income with this. And so on a Sunday, I try not to swear because I want at least one thing I do to be monetizable. The other thing is if you swear in the first 5 minutes, they will almost automatically demonetize you. But if you can kind of get beyond the first 5 to 15 minutes of if you're going to go for a longer show, they sort of lose interest and you can swear later on. The opportunity or the chance of Kevin not swearing in the first 5 minutes and demonetizing all of our happy hours is pretty slim. But anyway, so it's not like 800 pounds is even hard for him. Didn't he get 100,000 to go on GoFundMe? Yeah, James, he got thousands and thousands of just idiots from around the world threw money at him because he gave them cover to circulate Nazi propaganda under the guise of a joke. So yeah, he can wipe his fine tweet, his crying over his 800-pound loss with 20-pound notes. The other thing we should keep an eye on is that Dankula promised he would not personally benefit from any of the money he raised, and that anything he didn't need for his legal defense would go to charity. So, like Anita Sarkeesian's transparency, I would expect Count Dankula to also provide that transparency to prove he's never used that money to pay for a trip, or to buy groceries, or to pay his rent, or anything that, if it wasn't spent on his attorney, or or on the arrestment order, because I guess you could raise money to pay your fine, it should all go to charity. Yeah, he wanted his Tommy Robinson moment, says Dorian, straight up. Imagine aspiring to be a Little League Tommy Robinson. Very true. Good afternoon, everyone, from Sophia. YouTube works on Sargon rules. 5 minutes, God, that's too long. Yeah, exactly. Go 5 minutes without swearing. That's you effed then. So everyone's now saying hello, hi, all that stuff. Here is the Carl and Tommy summary to save you the boredom of having to watch it. All right, let's see what John's put here in us. Okay. Say yes, yes, yes. This is from today? Is today Saturday the 24th or the 23rd? Anyway, I'm not prepared to read this. Sorry, I didn't do this for my show notes. So I will just push this out here, promote it for you. John, you guys can go check that out. The link is in the description box. I'll do the first paragraph, though. I'm going to read from a distance. The behavior of, it says, Tommy Robinson excuses beyond desperate. The behavior of Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who styles himself Tommy Robinson, in twice doorstepping historian and campaigner Mike Suchberry, was bang out of order, very British, for a whole variety of reasons. Now it turns out that his campaign is developed not necessarily to Lennon's advantage, and as a result he has tried to excuse his actions in a discussion with Carl Benjamin, who styles himself Sargon of Akkad. That sounds, yes. I won't have a chance to read it because I've got other things prepped, but everyone knows about this now. All right. How are we for time? I feel like actually it's getting, what does that say? Only 25 minutes. I mean, I might need a break early because I've been drinking a lot of coffee this morning. All right. Hey, let's do a little bit more in the chat before we get going on to our Jordan B. Peterson stuff. No, you guys are just chatting with each other, so that's fine. All right. So, shall we talk about Jordan B. Peterson and how we have to give him a lot of love and a lot of pets because Cambridge rejected him. Cambridge University. He thought he was going to get some love. And then he got shown the front door. I've got a couple things on this, so let's get into it. I'm trying to get his Jordan B. Peterson. I don't have anywhere I could put him, otherwise I would. There's no obvious place to stick him because the camera's all taken up with me. But all right, let's work our way down. I know that I've got some tweets on this, including one from Philip Moriarty. I got an email on Thursday or whatever it was this week, or Friday, from Philip, because we email, even though he's offline now, we still, I don't know, email back and forth a couple of times a month, maybe, or once a month or so, and it's always very nice to chat with him. He's usually very busy and doing all kinds of important, fun research things or academic related work. So, Micaiah, by the way, is awesome. I miss chatting with Micaiah. All right. Is this? Oh, that's the Jordan B. Peterson whiny thing. So let's go down first to some of the coverage. Now, two things that, can I get distracted? This website, this Twitter account is hilarious. It's called No Context PragerU. And what they do, I don't know if they just take, I guess we can click on them and say, parody account, visual aids from PragerU without context. This account has no affiliation with PragerU. All right, so they take information that PragerU puts up in its videos. And for anyone who understands how to present data literacy, how to communicate science to the public, these are all examples of how not to present data. So let's take a look at them before we get on. This is so dumb. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Look at it. Capitalism, socialism. Capitalism has got a bar chart. Nothing's labeled. We don't know what this is measuring. We don't know if this is percentages or people or years or dollars or what. And then socialism's just more. There's no labeling. If you sent this to me as an undergraduate, I would mark you down for this. This is an utter failure in how I have a whole lecture on how to present data to avoid this kind of stuff. Maybe I should send it to PragerU, because whoever prepares this stuff, well, of course they're disingenuous because they know if they presented accurate data, it would disprove their worldview, because as Stephen Colbert said, reality has a well-known liberal bias. It's failing. It's utterly failing. The idea that PragerU wants us to take them seriously when they can't even label their own charts appropriately. So what are the things you should look for in a chart? Well, one, the presentation of the data should be able to be interpreted by anyone looking at the chart. All the relevant information should be in the chart right there. You shouldn't have to, look outside of the chart to understand it. So, sorry guys. First thing is, what is this comparing? It should say somewhere figure 1, or give a little title like comparing joy under capitalism to joy under socialism, or widgets produced. I don't care what the content of the comparison is, but it should say what is being compared and the units in which it's being compared and the years for which the data has been collected. The next thing you should have is you should label your data. Like, what are we looking at here? Percentages, individual units, growth over time, differences in something? Who knows? Then another thing you should always provide is list the source of your data. Is this coming from, I'm doing laundry and I'm like keeping half an ear out because I've got a washing machine that empties into my sink, and I'm always want to make sure that my sink doesn't get something blocked in and overflow, but I think everything's fine. You need to put where your data come from so that anyone else who wants to go and look at these numbers themselves and independently verify or evaluate your presentation of the data can do so. Because if you have nothing to hide, if you're being truthful and accurately representing the data that exists, well, then it shouldn't be an intimidation factor, or it shouldn't worry you that people want to see the original data, because a reasonable person using that data should come to the same conclusion or a similar conclusion. So this is just freaking nonsense. It just shows that these guys are hacks and they're not intellectuals. And the U part, they're as much a U as Trump U. They're not a university. Okay. All right, this one really freaked people out because it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. I'm gonna put your size as comment. I'm approving your size as a comment. Oh my, that's unusual. All right. A bar chart is a way to represent descriptive data for a thing in a sort of fixed period of time, right? The point of an axis is to show a relationship over time, like this, the XY thing. Like something goes up and something goes down, right? And so here we have so many problems. Again, it just says US since 2017. They're comparing completely different metrics. So if you want to say they're going to compare dollars in this chart, like how much was collected in the taxes and how much was produced by the economy, what does the government regulation have to do with dollars? So that can't be, the common metric across can't be in dollars that I can think of, because how are you going to estimate the cost of government regulation vis-a-vis taxes? Like, I don't, since 2000, there's no data points on this. It's garbage. It's utter nonsense. If you wanted to interpret this chart, you honestly couldn't. You honestly could not interpret this chart. You don't know where the data's coming from. You don't know what units it's being measured in. You don't know what these different, I'm pointing my screen here like you guys can see what I'm pointing at. But these lines here, we don't know what, are these billions of dollars, millions of dollars, gajillions of dollars? Who knows? PragerU, total fakes. Frauds, conmen, ideological propagandists who don't want to educate you, they want to indoctrinate you. And then this one. Again, just what? Just what? Economic expansion, welfare, and jobs. For what years? In what countries? What's the unit of comparison? Why are these three things being put together? What are we meant to understand from this chart? Welfare is bigger than economic expansion and jobs. Well, yeah, if you looked at, for instance, after the financial crash, and because of mismanagement by Wall Street and capitalists and the oligarch class, the global financial collapse produced a massive uptake in people who needed to apply for unemployment and benefits because the economy tanked. So if we're looking at, for instance, how much welfare was going on in 2000, how much welfare claims were going on versus jobs and economic expansion in 2009, yeah, that would be an unsurprising chart given the financial situation. But I don't know if that's what that means. I have no idea what this means. So, oh, yeah, the chart's giving you the finger. Yeah, Mariana, that's it. The chart's just here to give us the finger. PragerU. Utterly useless, honestly. And whoever appears for them is a hack. They're promoting hackery. And just as a little, maybe say, a reason that might explain this. So this happened on the 20th. This is hilarious. Jordan Peterson requested a visiting fellowship at the Faculty of Divinity. Now he's in psychology. He's supposed to be in psychology. And he pretends that he isn't a reactionary Christian conservative chauvinist, which he is. And that chauvinism is increasingly coming out. So, he had this aspiration to be at Cambridge at the Faculty of Divinity because he longs for validation, clearly. And initially they offered him a visiting fellowship, probably on the basis of he's a professor in Toronto, and has published works and he's got some books out. And they didn't look, whoever it was on the committee didn't look into his comments. And let me be clear as to why. Normally you don't have to. Normally, when it comes to inviting a visiting fellow from another institution, they haven't made their name internationally by being a bigot. They haven't doxed students. They haven't filed frivolous lawsuits against women who criticize them, and critiqued them in an article. They haven't advocated the idea that women long for brutal male domination, or sat down for an interview saying it's okay for men, it's actually the natural way for men to resolve conflict. is it escalates into violence. And then to also go on to lament the fact that society won't allow men to hit women. Most faculty don't do that because they're not chauvinistic, bigoted, self-absorbed, narcissistic pseudoscientists in the way Jordan Peterson is. And so once they got a little fact-checked that they couldn't just trust the professorship as being somebody who was capable and able to speak in a measured way in public, then they had to rescind it. So, I mean, Cambridge screwed up, I'm just going to say this, by not having their due diligence, but on the other hand, normally you wouldn't have to do due diligence. It's only when you get these right-wing, conservative, authoritarian, reactionary types who want to undermine and overturn what is being taught at universities in order to impose their ideological worldview, as opposed to teaching students how to think critically about many worldviews, is going on. So there's a lot of people flipping out, but as ever, where is I can't find it. Yes, I can't pronounce this, but this account, I don't know if you follow them or not, they drag people who are shitlords all the time. And should we enjoy some of these quotes? I think I have to pop in my headset for us to do that. So let me see if I can get this going. Ooh, you are hearing it. Ooh, sorry guys. Did you oh, it's being muted. Okay, sorry. I thought it was no, I think was it playing before? Yeah, it sounds like you guys can hear that and I can't. Or maybe not. All right, let's listen to Jordy PB and see what nonsense he has to say, because this goes to why they ended up rescinding his invitation, because they didn't know about this stuff. So let media source, that seems fine. Okay. Oops. No. Maybe I can do this during the break. I can check during the break if I can change the sound on this. So I think now I have to run the sound through my speakers there. See, it's not easy running one of these live shows. All right, let's see if we hear this now.
Of reason to be resentful and
there, yeah. Look at me. See that those couple weeks messing up with OBS, we got here eventually. All right, so first let's make sure that this is I won't make it a big screen after that Crufts warning Kevin got. I'm a little bit intimidated by YouTube just being like, you can't do this. But oh, by the way, I see Wizard saying, what do you think about the coming debate between Destiny and Sam Cedar versus Sargon and Stefan Molyneux? Oh, get me popcorn. I am here for that, baby. I am so kidding. Are you kidding? Destiny and Sam Cedar? Stefan Molyneux and Sargon Akkad. I mean, you can disagree with Destiny's maybe libertarian takes on capitalism, whatever, but you can't say the man's not articulate. You can't say the man's not done his homework. Destiny is an autodidact. Right now, and I think someone slammed me for some reason for saying he wasn't using like the language of a master's person, someone who'd gotten a master's or whatever else. In that, I mean, sometimes you have to, when you become more and more specialist, you have to pitch the way you use language and the words you use based on where your audience is. So someone with a master's degree can speak in different ways, and I think Destiny, basically, he consumes information in a way to speak to the public, and he speaks in a public way about more complicated issues, which is really important. But I have a lot of respect for his ability, his commitment to self-education, to self-reflection, and continually looking up and checking his own information. So you've got him, and then Sam Cedar is also exceedingly coherent, cogent, articulate, and I think he's also kind of waiting. He's quite happy to have a debate. Whereas Stefan, spelled in the Polish fashion, Molyneux, and Sargon are entirely emotional and irrational and incapable of making a coherent point. Sargon especially, we've seen him fall on his face again and again and again and again and again because he can't process information in real time. He comes into a debate with he's got blinkers on, his ideological worldview, which is also what Molyneux has as well. And then he doesn't have a depth of understanding because he doesn't actually understand like that words can have multiple definitions, or that he doesn't understand what the actual scope of the word that he's using means, or he uses the wrong word at the wrong time. And when he's put on his back foot, he just goes to personal attacks. And he goes to personal attacks because he's intellectually impotent, and there's no depth to him. So that's going to be amazing. Right. I had a haircut this week. I don't know if you noticed. I'm very Prince Valiant look going on here. My bangs aren't down to here. It's very squared off. So I'm feeling better. And don't forget, anti-sargonism is the new punk rock. All right, so let's see what dumbass things Jordan Peterson is saying in this clip. What is the reaction? Jordan Peterson argues Hitler and the Nazis were doing what was normal and logic given the circumstances. All right, let's hear this nonsense.
And hateful, because, I mean, think about what they went through. We can't even imagine it. First of all, there was World War I, and so there was many men, like Hitler himself, who served in the trenches. And there's one story about Hitler. He won a medal for heroism in World War I, and he was sitting around with a group of his buddies and went off to do something, God only knows what. And when he came back, they were all dead because a mine had, not a mine, I don't remember, some kind of shell had landed in the middle of them, killed them all. It's like, that changes you. Yeah. You know, and then afterwards there was all these brutalized men who'd come out of the trenches. I mean, you just can't imagine what it must have been like in the trenches, you know, especially if you were there for like a couple of years. You weren't the same person. Get out of there, you're unemployed, your country's in ruins. Then the hyperinflation hits, and every single person in Germany who ever saved any money at all is flat, bloody broke. And then there's a communist revolution brewing in Russia, and it's like, it's hell. And the Nazis came along and said, well, not only are we going to restore order and greatness, but we're going to bloody well tell you whose fault this is. Yeah. It's like, and Hitler, I've studied him a lot, trying to understand what happened. And
I don't doubt that. All right, so just a little reality check. The Nazis weren't like an overwhelmingly popular party. They didn't sweep in on this massive popular vote, if I remember. I mean, they did get in power, but it wasn't by that much, and they weren't nationally acclaimed. You know, they sort of got into power and then expanded it out. So just because things were bad in Germany didn't mean it inevitably had to lead to Nazism. I think that there is a powerful long-term effect of economic crisis that does push people to a populist right. I think we saw that with the financial crisis. You do see that with the Great Depression was the phrase I was looking for. But it's not inevitable, and it certainly isn't universal. There are portions of the population that are more open or even are willing to embrace a right-wing populism. But okay. So, once again, here, Jordan Peterson, blah, 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 blah. He loves to hear himself talk. Says the woman who's doing a 2-hour live show.
Hitler was, Carl Jung called him the mouthpiece of the collective unconscious of the German people.
No, there were a lot of people who did not agree with Hitler. God, he's really legitimizing Hitler here. By, anyway.
Imagine there's all this resentment and hatred brewing underneath the surface, and all this chaos is there, and the desire for order is like clamoring in everyone's minds. And Hitler comes along, and he's a very powerful emotional orator, and he's watching the crowd, and he listens. And when he says thing A, nothing happens. And when he says thing B, everybody roars. And so he takes note of that. And
yeah, it's just like Trump, isn't it? It's just like Trump and build that wall. It's just like Trump and build the wall, Jordan Peterson. So think about that. Think about the fact that Hitler and Trump have a lot in common rhetorically and how they react to audiences.
Is he not even conscious exactly, right? Because he's being molded by the crowd.
How does he know what's in Hitler's brain? This is the kind of, and can I also just start to call out, Jordan Peterson is a pseudoscientist. There is a lot of utter nonsense, unscientific, unfalsifiable garbage that he puts out there. And one of the things I would like to see going forward is that people start slamming Peterson more for his pseudoscience. This is something that people who are skeptics should be very suspicious of. And making up these stories acting as if he can predict what was inside Hitler's unconscious influences about being shaped by the crowd. It's nonsense. It's fiction. It's pseudoscience.
And so they roar, and so we think, so that's a reinforcement, that's a reward. And so then he goes down that line a little bit farther, and they roar some more, and
like
then
Trump.
he tries something else, and it's silent.
He becomes
like,
what they want.
You bet, exactly that, man. He acts out the dark desire of the mob.
Oh, I see. Hitler wasn't responsible for what he was doing. He was just because of positive reinforcement. The crowd, it was the bloodthirsty Germans who shaped Hitler into the hate monster he was. What the hell is he talking about? You know, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf before he was a popular, political speaker. So, I mean, I'm not a Hitler expert, but this is sounding like bullshit to me. This sounds like Jordan Peterson making up a story as he's on the fly right here, with literally nothing to back him except whatever happens to come into his head. All right, got a few more seconds.
So he becomes the embodiment of the dark desire of the mob, and that's partly why he had the charisma. It's right, because there's this unconscious fantasy brewing in the back of everyone's mind.
What? Hitler became charismatic because everyone else had a fantasy of what brewing in the back of their minds? This guy talks garbage. Oh yeah, here he is with his Pepe crowd. Yeah, Jordan B. Peterson. Why would Cambridge not want to associate someone who hangs out with the same OK symbol flashed by the white supremacist killer in New Zealand, or the MAGA hat stuff, and the Pepe, alt-right symbols combination? Why wouldn't Cambridge want to hang out with him? All right. Oh, okay. More. We'll have some fun with these clips, and then we'll go in the second hour. We'll continue on with this. All right. So I haven't listened to these, so I don't know what's going on with these comments. So we'll start from scratch now and see what this is. Jordan Peterson says he's against gay marriage because cultural Marxists support it, and it's an assault on traditional modes of being. No, it's not gay marriage is not. Marriage equality is not an existential threat to the modes of being of non-gay people. But again, Peterson's a bigot. So,
Another question voted up, 77 votes. Australia is holding a plebiscite on whether to legalize gay marriage. I'm against the Yes campaign, but only because it's backed by cultural Marxists. I'm curious to hear your views on gay marriage.
Let's see, Jordy, what do you have to say?
Well, I would be against it too if it was backed by cultural Marxists, because...
Why give people equal rights when you can, spite them because you disagree with somebody else? Can I just stop there? I would also oppose it if it was supported by cultural Marxists. So that just means whatever we say, you're going to say the opposite if you think that I'm a cultural Marxist? Is that really how you want to formulate your policy, Mr. Maps of Meaning? Mr. Existential Threat. Oh, Hitler was shaped by the crowd because they found he was charismatic because they found him charismatic, because they made him charismatic through their interactions. Blah, blah, blah. Crap. No. Why have a core of, let's say, humanist values that inform how you consider things going on? No. Just be reactive, because that's what reactionaries are. Reactionaries react against things and try to stop them from taking away anything that, like progresses society. So yes, blind opposition from the professor.
It isn't clear to me that it will satisfy the ever-increasing, what would you call it, demand for an assault on traditional modes of being.
Equality under the law, ladies and gentlemen. And what does Captain A say? Ladies, enbies, and gents? Just being yourself and getting equality under the law is a threat to people like Jordan Peterson. Brilliant. That's how he thinks about things. What a fucking moron. All right. Peterson is asked about same-sex adoption, and he responds. Oh, let's hear him being a bigot about this.
Being gay and in a long-term relationship, we are considering kids. What are your thoughts about gay people raising children? I think the devil's in the details, to tell you the truth. If I was ever talking to any individuals about that, the question is, well, how would you raise them? I mean, you have problems, right? If you're both of the same sex, then you're going to have the problem of how to provide the proper model for, let's say you have a boy and a girl. We know this is indisputable, and this is something I've talked to Warren Farrell about. Kids in intact heterosexual families where the father is present do way better.
Right, but there are also studies that show it's just two parents. But Mr. Psychology might not have known about that yet. Yeah, Jordan Peterson's a bigot, right? What happens if you're in a heterosexual, your family is a heterosexual couple, married, whatever, and your mother dies? Are you suddenly bereft now of all, role models for women in your life? This idea that, if you don't have a man and a woman, doesn't matter the quality of the parenting, he's just saying the presence of it is enough. But you need to look at whether we haven't had two-parent families with same-sex couples. So assuming that a mother and a father are necessary versus two parents who can distribute the economic, domestic, and emotional labor around raising a child, that is, from what I understand, what studies are showing. So again, Jordan Peterson is a Christian bigot. He doesn't care about equality under the law. He's just looking to justify the oppression of women, the marginalization of gay people, and to undermine the credibility of anything that questions men should run things because they have a penis. So,
on multiple indices than kids who are part of single-parent families.
And that's comparing apples with oranges. If you want to look at the effect of same-sex parenting, you have to compare heterosexual couples to same-sex couples, or any two-parent situation. If you move in with your mom moves in with your aunt, and they're sharing stuff and raising things because they're a close family. Does that also have the same effect as being in a married cis couple? Sorry, I keep interrupting because he's dumb.
Now, that doesn't mean that there are no single parents who do a good job, right? That's not the same bloody claim. Those are different claims.
Yeah, like a same-sex couple and an opposite-sex couple, you can't compare single-parent performance to that either. You have to look at the same-sex versus opposite-sex parenthood to see. You can't just assume that the man-woman one is going to be better.
But on average, not only do kids where fathers are present do better, but societies, or even local societies where there are more fathers present, do better, not only for the kids that they're fathering, but the kids in the neighborhood where there are lots of intact families with fathers do better.
I'd really like to see the multi-level model and analysis that would go along with that. So for those of you who don't do stats, one of the things that researchers, especially like geographers and political scientists, do is they want to look at individual effects, neighborhood effects, maybe state effects or national effects, and we have something called multi-level modeling, which allows you to incorporate individual level and meso level and in intermediary levels, like maybe the school district or the neighborhood, and then also higher order information like the state they live in or the country they live in, and see the individual effects of, let's say, living in a Western country and then also living in an urban area and living in this school district and having, this family over here. I would be very interested to see if there's actually really rigorous multi-level modeling that shows this effect consistently, not just in one study in one location, but like over and over and over again in different countries, in different situations, in different scenarios. That's what you would have to do to make that claim.
And so I believe quite firmly that the nuclear family is the smallest viable human unit. Father, mother, child. Smallest viable unit. And if you fragment it below that, then you end up paying.
Yeah, but he's not talking about fragmenting it. You're talking about having two parents just being of the same sex. But he can't contemplate that could possibly be equal. So it has to be closer to, I guess. Oh no! Okay. All right, we can bring down here. I thought we were in my bookmarks, but we're clearly not. Singing the masculinity blues. You guys want to see another reason why Jordan Peterson should have been disinvited? Was properly disinvited from Cambridge? Okay, so Jordan Peterson that says that he has to remove 90% of himself when he is around women because politeness trumps truth. All right, so let's hear this 24-second clip.
I'm in a mixed gender discussion group. I have to basically remove about 90% of myself. Because if I was who I am, the discussion wouldn't even get off the ground. I have to rein myself in and be so polite with the women I've worked with. Politeness trumps truth.
Politeness trumps truth.
You bet. If I'm in...
What a freak. What a freak. Seriously, what the hell is this guy? I mean, I understand how if you put your head down, you can get a professorship. But honestly, it's pretty ridiculous that this guy is respected, to be honest. All right, so with that now, that framework, that background, we can look a little bit at the news coverage of Geordie's getting his ass handed to him, being humiliated after being accepted due to a lack of due diligence. Just wanted to see if... Oh, should we do some, after all of that Peterson garbage, should we have a little moment of zen, you guys? All right, let's have a moment of zen, then maybe we can even think about taking a break. So here we go. We're going to put the sound on. Oh, what happened? Oh, did I put it in a different window? No, it just disappeared. I wanted to watch the goats, but it wouldn't let me open up the window. So I have to drag it down again. Let's just watch these little goats. I don't know if there's any good sound, but no. There we go. So cute. Doesn't that just make you happy? The one on the left there, he's really got pretty good skills. He gets the whole idea that if you go to the top and you just sort of wait, you'll slide down. Look at him go. He's so agile. I think he wants to be an ice skater, you guys. I think he wants to be a figure skater. I think that was what he really wanted to do with his life, because clearly he's got the moonwalk down. Really got it down, that one. Little hoops on this stuff. Okay, where were we again? Oh, we were going to talk about... I was thinking about taking a break. Yes, all right. So when we get back from the break, we will look at BBC and Guardian coverage of Jordan B. Peterson. We'll take a look at Professor Philip Moriarty's reaction to Cambridge's decision, and we'll also look at Jordan P. Peterson whining. And why am I spending so much time on this? Partly because I wanted to talk about this in the happy hour, but with Carl and UKIP and Brexit and War Corps, it was just too much of a show to do this properly. And two, although it's not an earth-shattering news story, I do think it's important to spend a little time explaining why Jordan B. Peterson is just like not the cool professor everyone thinks he is. He's not that intellectually rigorous. He's said shocking things in the past, and also whenever he's criticized like this, and we'll see another thing, I have to make a note of this, hold on, about his book in New Zealand. You see his book wasn't being offered by one store, and a bunch of twats were running around saying that he had been banned. So we're going to talk about his banning, which wasn't a banning at all, and unpacking this rhetoric and unpacking legitimate objections to the nonsense, the pseudoscience. Let's just call it that. Jordan Peterson's pseudoscience. This is good critique, because he should elevate his game. He shouldn't be putting out this pseudoscience. We should expect more from someone who has a professor in front of their name. So we're going to take a break now, and go back to the music. I was thinking about changing the music to something closer to the podcast happy hour song. I don't know if you guys, yes, by the way, just 2 more minutes. I might be able to play it from the link here, but if you aren't keeping up with the podcast, there's the podcast. I guess I should go to the show rather than the background, but I have worked very hard to mix the audio and put in a new intro and an outro with a legal disclaimer provided by Bruce Bartlett, one of my supporters, one of my patrons. And I think maybe what I can do is, rather than, if you guys don't mind, just a little... Nah, I'm trying to think if I should do this or not. I do like this song, but I would have to put it in and download it and loop it, so it's probably not worth doing. But if you go now to this Podbean website where you can check out the podcast, it will be up to date by Monday. I have done the audio for the most recent happy hour, and that is ready to go, but before that, I have all the ones that I didn't get going on. So you can go check out the podcast if you've missed any of our shows in the past, or if you prefer to hear the show on a lower bandwidth, demanding format like a podcast. Alrighty, let's take a break. We're going to transition here, and what time have we got? 12 after. I managed to natter for a further 4 minutes during that. Let's go take a comfort break, get some coffee, stretch your legs, and sorry, before we leave, I know I always do this. We're gonna get going. No, we're not. Check this out, you guys. That's my floor chair. I can. Oh, look at this. Oh, so nice. Oh, so comfortable. Oh, Dusty, you changed my life. This is so good. It's so brilliant. I maybe you haven't noticed, but I'm not fidgeting as much. I can just be comfortable and lean back. If I want to lean back a bit more, I can even pull my mic a little bit closer. Do that. Oh, it's so nice. It's so nice doing these shows now that I am not constantly having to support my lower back. So anyway, Dusty Smith, awesome recommendation. I'm trying to. How do I? This way. This way you see it. All right, or this way. There's my floor chair. Let's come back at 20 after. Let's just call it 7 minutes. That'll give me a chance to make some coffee and also to kind of set up things for the next couple minutes. So if anyone in the chat wants to know what's going on, we're going to come back at 20 minutes after the hour. See you guys for part 2. Thanks for watching so far, and I will do some more interacting with the chat. I know I've been focused a lot on the Jordan B. Peterson stuff in this last segment, but I'll get some more chat time in with you guys later. All right. See you at 20 after the hour. Oh, Jordan B. Peterson, what are you doing? Get out of the way. Alright guys, hey, I'm back. How you doing? I had a very productive break. I refreshed my coffee. Very important. Checked out my lipstick. This is holding up amazing. You'd think it was tattooed on. This lipstick is just holding. And I got my laundry out. Gonna start hanging up some of my laundry to dry. So I had a very productive break. I hope you did too. Alright, so we were in the middle of discussing Jordan B. Peterson's big embarrassment of being disinvited from the Faculty of Divinity when they learned what a complete shitlord he is. So, Kermit B. Peterson, yes. Alright, so let's have a little look at the chat here in case I missed anything. So let me just scroll up really quick. In case I missed any super chats especially. Not that I'm expecting any, but I don't want to miss any if there were any. I'm not expecting, like I said, but okay, good. No one is going unloved. That's what I wanted to make sure. So let's see. Banning books and burning books aren't the same thing, but information should be free. Yeah, yeah, I agree, but a proprietor deciding to not offer a book is not making, if the book is not free, it's just not available at that store. Jordan Peterson is full of dog shit. Yay! Nobody expects the SJW Inquisition and their comfy chair. Yes. Boy, I have to practice articulation. Working with words. They're hard. Cup of tea time, it was. How does the floor chair different from normal chairs? Well, good question, James. I'm glad you asked. Now, this is going to be slightly awkward because I'm sitting in it right now, but I am perfectly happy to show you. So I'll get out of my floor chair. I'm going to swap. I don't need this yet. We're not watching any videos, so I can take that out. All right. Let me demonstrate. I have to get out of it first. I have one pillow for my back, but okay, so now I'm much lower, which is why I had to adjust. This is a floor chair. Let's see. It's got no legs. I can balance it on my head. And the way that it works is it has a locking system. So I've now released the lock. And I take it all the way, so it's a flat board, really easy for storage. And once you lock it in this position, it opens it up to being set again into position. So now that it's unlocked, I can lock it there, just barely lifting me up, so I could like set it down and have just a little lift. I get number 2. That's the next angle. Oh, try this way. The next most secure angle. So that way, and there, and the final one is right. That's the one. So I think, is there one more? Oh no, I lied. There's one more that's more like a perpendicular. So I just plop my. And this is the cushy for my feet. It's the bunny. And you put your feet in here, like that, like ears. Okay, so now I'm back in it. Yeah, I do this stuff before I go and air you guys, so that you don't watch me do this. And yeah, now the thing is with being in a bed, it's not 100%. I mean, I can lean back, but it's too far back, so I often still put something to provide a bit of support. But for the most part, like now I can just put this bunny cushion just a little bit to help me lean forward for the show, and Bob's your uncle. I wasn't expecting a workout, but yeah, so now, oh, look at this. Oh, I could be an old lady, granny, rocking in her chair, almost. It's really nice. It has, in the last 6 months, and shout out to my patrons, the entire way that I do this is completely transformed. I'm sorry, this is a complete tangent. But because of them and their support, so this is my way of saying thank you before the show, I have now this 2-in-1. It's a mouse combined with a keyboard, so that I can move things around and switch between scenes really easily. I have this much nicer, can you see this, speaker from Sony for when we do our happy hours and we review stuff, when Kevin and I, so that really improved the sound. That was on sale from €130 down to 80. I've got this chair now, I've got the mic stand, so thanks patrons. I feel like I don't thank you enough. Every month I'm so grateful for you, so that's to support them. All right, how high off the floor is my computer setup? That high? You want metric or imperial? I don't know. All right, so a rigid beanbag, a little bit, but it does have more, of a backing. And as I said, with this little cushy guy, I can lean back and then just stick my feet in there, and then you got the cozy, cushy bunny thing. So, all right, we ready to get back to some JBP nonsense here? Let me get the screen up. All right, and I'm also going to have to get my headphones back in. Actually, I probably won't. I think we're done with video bits. The only thing I would say, I don't know if you guys have seen my video. I'll see if I can find it really quick here in my profile, because I do think it's important. This is something that really, really bothers me about Jordan B. Peterson. And there's a lot of things I understand. Different groups have different objections to things he said because it affects their community. And this is the one that gets under my skin, because it does feed into a kind of notion of women and their roles in life and what it's meant to be. And okay, yeah, sorry, I was battling with a bunch of Carl defenders on Twitter, trying to find, yep, maybe I can't. This is the one. This is my video. I put together these clips because they, to me, represent why Jordan B. Peterson isn't just a bad academic in terms of his pseudoscience. And Philip Moriarty is going to talk about this too when we get to his blog. Let me just start this by saying, I don't have a fundamental objection to Freud sort of on principle. I think that the concepts of the id, the ego, and the superego are incredibly useful. They're not empirical. We can't measure an id. We can't quantify an ego or a superego, but as structural concepts that inform the way we think about the world. They're useful. Freud, however, is not science. Like, Freudian approaches are not scientific. They are more along the lines of Marxism. Freud, Marx, and Adler were the three examples that Popper used in contrast to Einstein in terms of making falsifiable predictions. And maybe I had thought about this. I go on and on and on about falsifiability a lot because for my quant students especially, knowing why we have a null hypothesis. If you understand why you have a null hypothesis, then you will automatically understand how to frame the alternative hypothesis. So I often focused on falsification above a lot of other things when it comes to, like, this is what Gary Edwards goes on, about correspondence theory. Yeah, but when you're teaching quants, you need to know why the logic of a null hypothesis. So I do think falsification is an incredibly important line where we can distinguish speculation, pseudoscience, and science. And that's why when Jordan Peterson, who has a professor in front of his name, claims that he's, somehow drawing on Freud to justify his own misogyny, it's dangerous because people who don't know about Freud, don't understand Freud, think that somehow it's valid because Freud said it, or it gives authority to the idea that women long for totalitarian male dominance because you put the Freud in front of it and the guy saying it is a professor. All right, is that enough lead in? All right. So John, sorry, just before I go this, John, Kristi, you said earlier universities shouldn't have to do due diligence, but surely that sort of thing should be automatic if people they want to associate with are saying shitty stuff. John, do you know how many visiting fellowships an institution offers every year and goes through? I mean, honestly, you couldn't do it. We at GACES have a ton of visiting scholars that come in for 2 weeks at a time to use the Euro Lab or to use the Secure Data Center or to collaborate. We don't have a vetting department. That's not what human resources does. One could say that maybe that should be the job of the department head, but how can you possibly do all the background research on every single academic? It would be like you would need a private investigative company, or you need a private investigator to do it. So no, there is an assumption of professionalism that exists between peers, and also that you kind of trust your colleagues not to throw you under the bus by bringing in somebody who could be really controversial and embarrassing the institution. So those two things. But no, it's not like the Secret Service or vetting for security clearance. We don't have a vetting process for those kinds of invitations. So I just so don't see my name anywhere else. And so, oh, hey, Natalie, I see you're here. Welcome. Anyone else join? GS joined while I was away. I see 8DX. Hi, mate. How you doing? Thanks for stopping by. King John is in the house. And I think everyone else that's speaking has already been acknowledged. And if you haven't, Twisty Hippie. Dorian's in the house. And Plexus. Tom! I'll see you in a couple hours, Tom. I think that's everyone. Some Techno, Squidgy. That's everyone. All right. If not, I apologize if I missed your name. All right, let's hear from the twat.
It's like, is there an attraction? Is there an attraction that's emerging among the female radicals for that totalitarian male dominance that they've chased out of the West?
All right, so totalitarian male dominance chased out of the West. That's an interesting phrase. So what he acknowledges, by implication, when we break down the statement, is that societies have been, or in some ways still are, male-dominated in totalitarian ways. I didn't pick these words. These are JBP's words, right? So let's just define totalitarianism. What is he saying? Male system of government that is centralized and dictatorial and requires complete subservience to the state. That's what Jordan B. Peterson said existed in the West. A system of government or power, probably, right? Religion, too, is totalitarian and in nature and structure. Centralized male power Dictatorial male power that requires complete subservience. And his argument, let's just slowly walk through this. That system of totalitarian male dominance existed in the West, has been challenged by feminists and feminist critique, has been undermined and driven out. And his logic, Peterson's logic, is now that women are achieving their own liberation, especially radical feminists for some reason, actually subconsciously long for the thing that they've been agitating against. The more that you agitate against the male totalitarian power, that's evidence you want to be dominated, that you want dictators, that you want to be subservient to someone else. That's fucked up. That is fucked up. All right, next bit.
I think it's their unconscious wish for brutal male domination.
Right. So because there was I think he's talking here about women, but I'll go back because I think, we had a transitional cut, or we had a jump cut between these sections.
Yes. I think it's their unconscious wish for brutal male domination.
I don't think so.
Man,
I like that. That's fun.
Yeah, that's fun. Women wish for brutal, as in violent, as in harmful, as in excessive, excessively harmful. Male domination. What is up with this guy? What is up with his weird sexual fantasies about women who protest for their own autonomy? Bodily, legal, economic autonomy. He thinks this is an indication that they want to be smacked down by men, dominated by men, to be subservient to men. This is sick shit. This is some sick shit, and men are holding him up as a guide, as someone that they look to help them understand themselves in the world. But they're helping, his worldview puts men at the top simply by virtue of being men, not because they've earned it, not because they're biologically, demonstrably superior. You can say you can be physically bigger is not necessarily superior unless you're measuring weight. But when it comes to physical superiority, women give birth. So when men can stretch their hips out, if that's not a metric of superiority, providing the continuation of the species is pretty damn superior, but that's not his framework, right? Magical penis power, magical patriarchy, and it stops him from having to justify male power. If you just assume men are the natural leaders, if you just assume that men are there to run, that men are order and women are chaos, well then naturally men should be in charge of things. Not because they're equipped to, or educated to, or trained to, or have a certificate, or have demonstrated it. Now, it's not that women have had an opportunity or a chance and they can't do it. It's just because of penis power. Penis power justifies it all. That and God. But he won't say that, but that's what he thinks. Alright, so this is a compilation of him describing how he handles conflict with men, and then describing how he could not use the same structure of conflict resolution, if you want to call fighting a resolution, with a woman who criticized him once.
The parameters for my resistance are quite well defined, which is we talk, we argue, we push, and then it becomes physical. I'm defenseless against that kind of female insanity, because the techniques that I would use against a man who was employing those tactics are forbidden to me. It's like,
defenseless against female insanity. Defenseless. I don't know. He can't speak out again? He can't defend himself verbally? Oh, wait. Didn't he dox the student by putting out her private Facebook account name for all of his followers to go and brigade her? He was helpless, defenseless. The poor man couldn't smack a woman, so he had absolutely no other possible recourse. If he couldn't be violent, he was defenseless against that kind of female insanity. And by female insanity, he means criticism. That a woman was using her free speech rights to criticize him, and he didn't like it. So that was insanity. This is why he should not be at the divinity school. Is why, in my opinion, he shouldn't even be at Toronto anymore. But the fact is, if Toronto tried to fire him or tried to let him go, all he would do is turn it into a money-making venture. By the way, can I say, speaking of money-making ventures, remember when Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin were going to start their shitlord Patreon version? Oh, James, you never heard of him doxing anyone? Oh, I'm happy to show you that shit. Look at this. Jordan. Oh, I have to actually get it on the right one. Jordan Peterson docs. I had to look this up just the other day so I know what Vancouver newspaper it's in. Yeah, right here. Jordan Peterson doxes 2 student activists. So this was a couple years back. It's not that long ago. It wasn't like, the 90s or anything. When was this? What's the date on this? I'm looking for a date. Ah, here we go. Oh, 2017. October of 2017. I'll read it. From the Varsity, University of Toronto student newspaper since 1880. U of T psychology professor Jordan Peterson took to Twitter on October 26th to broadcast the Facebook profiles of 2 students who helped organize a protest of a Ryerson free speech event where Peterson was scheduled to speak. It was cancelled in August. The event, quote, the stifling of free speech on university campuses, unquote, would have featured prominent conservative speakers. The planned protest rally posed a potential threat if the 2 groups were to clash, and Ryerson University felt it did not have the proper security for the event. In one of his tweets, Peterson called the student protest organizers communists, really. He also called one of them an agitator, by the way. That's not in the article. That was me free associating. How am I for centering? I'm going to turn my camera a bit here. Got it. Continuing. One of the students' profiles is no longer publicly available on Facebook. The other student, Christine Elizabeth, has chosen to keep hers available. She feels Peterson's actions should not have been taken as a threat, but rather as a validation. When he doxed me, he validated me, she said. He validated everything I was saying. Woman has a point. She was saying Jordan Peterson's a piece of shit. Jordan Peterson goes out and acts like a piece of shit, and she goes, thank you, JBP, for validating my critique. You are a piece of shit. Elizabeth, not all heroes wear capes. Elizabeth has received extensive hate mail and harassment via Facebook, some of which have bordered on death threats. These are his fans, said Elizabeth. These are the people he's pandering to. This is why I take issue. The free speech event has been rescheduled for November 11th, now at Canadian Christian College, which Elizabeth says her group still plans on protesting. Peterson did not respond to the Varsity request for comment. And here he is, Peterson posting out one of the communists, really, who celebrated the shutdown of our Ryerson talk, Studying Business. And he has this person's Facebook page. It was liked 200 times. I don't have all the information on it, but then his other one said, agitator for Ryerson U shutdown of our OG free speech event, featured the neighborhood poster on her Facebook page, and then he put a link to her Facebook page. What a piece of shit. So, yeah, he sent his fans to go and harass students by putting their Facebook accounts on his Twitter account. Doxing. So happy to, pass that information along. Oh, hey, can I just, to counter Peterson, this came in my local paper, Wochenende Spiel, the Weekend Mirror. This says, mit Blick auf die Wahlen zum Europaparlament kam das Bündnis Kein Fidel für Rassismus zu einer stadtweiten Aktion zusammen. So basically what this says, and I had it translated before, so I'm not doing this on the fly. With an overview or with an eye toward the European elections that are coming up, the No Neighborhood for Racism had a citywide sort of collective action. So this is, I saw this going on. I have to stop saying the word actually so often. I saw this happening live. I didn't know what it was at the time. I walked past the sign. And you can see in the background, people have signs that say respect, Zusammenhalt, I think that says. And it's generally just like a pro, don't be a racist asshole. Especially with the European elections coming up. So this is why I love living in Cologne. And this area, Chorweiler, is not where I live. I don't live in that part of town, but they are very cool. Alright, so there are good people in the world who are trying to make the world less bigoted, unlike Jordan Peterson. Okay, let's get in now. We've got the... oh, hey, okay, right, sorry, another distraction. One is a really cute kitty. Oh, look at that. This was in relation to a conversation I had about the fact that every Saturday I do my grocery shopping because Sundays the shops are closed, and every Saturday I have to try to figure out what is the minimal amount of clothing I have to change in order for me to wear my pajamas as much as possible to the store, so I don't have to get dressed and get undressed. And someone said, I'm just going to hide under a blanket. And I replied back with that gif. Okay. Oh, yes, we've got Carl's lit, his UKIP lit going on. There are 2 stories I want to look at. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. There are 4. The first one is one of the 2 news stories about Peterson. That's either going to be... Is this the bookmarks or just my media? That's why I'm not finding what I need. I need to go to my bookmarks page. A BBC article about the Cambridge rejection. There's a Guardian article about the rejection. And there's a Philip Moriarty reaction and then JBP's reaction. So this one's the... Alright, let's look at the Guardian. The BBC one I don't know is any better, and the Guardian usually does a pretty good job, so we can check them out. How's my sound, by the way? I'm looking a little soft, so I might just bump this up a bit. Alright. Cambridge University rescinds Jordan Peterson invitation. Offer from a visiting fellowship to controversial professor resulted in a backlash from faculty and students. Isn't it interesting? Lots of people go to speak on campuses literally every day. Every day around the world, academics come and give talks on campuses. And yet it's only certain reactionary bigots that attract like the demands for rescinding invitations. From Sarah March, and this is from Wednesday the 20th of March. Cambridge University has rescinded its offer of a visiting fellowship to Jordan Peterson, the self-styled professor against political correctness, after a backlash from faculty and students. Well, I guess, if you have the idea to be against political correctness ultimately is not calling people slurs, racist slurs, homophobic slurs, transphobic slurs, any bigoted comments. So political correctness is about choosing language that doesn't deliberately hurt other people's feelings. That's all it is. End of the day, political correctness is verbally, don't be a dick. That's it, just implementing don't be a dick into the way you talk about people and things. But Jordan P. Peterson is against not being a dick. Peterson, a psychology professor from Toronto, who has courted controversial... Let's start that again. Peterson, a psychology professor from Toronto, who has courted controversy for his views on transgender rights, gender, and race, announced on Monday via his YouTube channel that he was joining Cambridge for 2 months. No, you're not. Quote, in October, I am going to Cambridge University in the UK, as opposed to Cambridge, in Hoboken? For 2 months, and I will be a visiting fellow there at the Divinity School, and should give me the opportunity to talk to religious experts of all types for a couple of months, as well as students. It's a thrill for someone academically minded to be invited there to sit in and participate for a few months. True. Cambridge and Oxford aren't necessarily what they used to be back in the 12th century or the 13th century when they were, the only game in town or whatever, but they're still highly prestigious. There's a lot of really good academics at both of those institutions. There's other good institutions. I'm not going to just defer to Oxbridge because they're Oxbridge. But yeah, they've got some great people there, so it is an honor. And also there's something about the atmosphere. I visited a colleague of mine while she was at Oxford and did a whole high table dinner. And Oxford, I think, personally, I like the aesthetic of it better than Cambridge because it's more preserved in terms of its time. Cambridge is a more vibrant town. It feels like a university town. In Oxford, you could totally film a Middle Ages movie, and as long as you remove all of the cars and you cover up the sidewalks, the buildings look like perfect. But so it is an honor to be on. It is an honor to be acknowledged like that and to be given a visiting fellowship at an Oxbridge University. So he was all, look at me, I'm so validated. I don't. He doesn't even do divinity. This is it. Like he's supposed to be in psychology, right? And I'm not saying that there isn't a role for, like, say, the psychology of religion in that way, but I don't think he was going there for that reason. But we'll never know now because he's not going. All right. The University of Cambridge said Peterson requested to be a visiting fellow and was initially granted the opportunity. But after further review, it decided to take back the offer. Quote, Cambridge is an inclusive environment, and we expect all our staff and visitors to uphold our principles. There is no place for anyone here who cannot, unquote, a spokesperson said, for the university. Ooh, ouch! Ouch! Basically, this is what they went. There is no place here for anyone who cannot. Peterson's a bigot. Good! Actions have consequences. Words have consequences. Selling out your academic integrity for your lobster-themed t-shirts has consequences. So no, everyone is taking Peterson less seriously the more famous he becomes. Peterson, whose self-help book 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. Remember, what is chaos in Peterson's world associated with? Women and the feminine, right? Men are order, women are chaos. His rules of life is an antidote to chaos / the feminine / women. Became a bestseller in the UK, US, Canada, Australia, Germany, and France, and amassed more than 1 million followers on Twitter. In September 2016, he expressed concern on YouTube about the development of a federal amendment to add gender identity and expression to the Canadian Human Rights Act. This would make it illegal to stop someone from getting a job or discriminate against them in the workplace based on the gender they identify with or outwardly express. Peterson claimed the law was an infringement on free speech. Again, being nice is just too onerous for him. And said that he would refuse to use any pronoun other than he or she. His views sparked protests across Toronto's university campus. He also challenged his university plans for mandatory anti-bias training and has railed against Marxism, human rights organizations, HR departments, and, quote, an underground apparatus of radical left political motivations, unquote, forcing gender-neutral pronouns on him. They don't even go into the fact that he's defended Carl Benjamin's use of the N-word, defended his use of homophobic slurs, defended him not accommodating Patreon by issuing an apology and changing his behavior in order to stay on the platform. None of that is mentioned here, but to me, it should be. Because in addition to him being a bigot on trans issues, he should also be known as the bigot who is defending the use of the N-word. Because he did. I'm not saying it instead of. I think it should go along with. Add on. Oh, also the brutal male domination. You know. He also... Oh, I got that part already. In an interview in 2018, he doubted the science behind climate change. Quote, most of the global warming posturing is a masquerade for anti-capitalists to have a go at the Western patriarchy. This guy is such a hack. He is such a useless hack. And the more he talks, the more obvious it is that you don't have to be a genius to become a professor. You just need to do the things that are necessary on the list to do. And if you can... I'm not saying it's easy to get a peer-reviewed article done, but honestly, if somebody worked at it, and another person told you what to do and gave you tips, you too could write an article that would make it into a peer-reviewed journal with enough practice. that doesn't necessarily mean everything you say is brilliant. And clearly, quite a lot of what Jordan Peterson says is the opposite of brilliant. All right, keeping going. That's continuing on with his quote. That's partly why the climate change thing for me is a contentious issue, because you can't trust the players. You can't trust the data because there is too much ideology involved. Oh my God. This is why he's a pseudoscientist. This to me shows that actually, Jordan Peterson, how are you possibly a psychology professor when you don't understand data? There is no contention about the scientific data that is being used. And different people can take the data and say things about it, and you can not trust someone's take on the data, but the data themselves, if they're correctly assembled, and I can't think of any reason why there's been an ongoing conspiracy to skew climate data, since the writing of the Sand County Almanac. Who was the guy who wrote that he's in Wisconsin. Sand County Almanac. Who wrote that? I can't remember now. Maybe somebody in the chat will. But yeah, he's basically saying you can't trust data if they come from people you politically disagree with, as if the data themselves are biased because of who's citing them. And that's not how you should be using, independent data. And he's lying. He's lying about how data works. You can trust data. Sorry, everyone. He's a pseudoscientist. If he thinks that you can't trust data because of the people who are using it, then it shows he doesn't understand quantitative social research. He doesn't understand it, or he chooses to misrepresent it for personal profit. In a statement, Cambridge University Students' Union said, "We are relieved to hear that Jordan Peterson's request for a visiting fellowship to Cambridge's Faculty of Divinity has been rescinded following further review. It is a political act to associate the university with an academic's work through offers which legitimize figures such as Peterson. His work and views are not representative of the student body, and as such we do not see his visit as a valuable contribution to the university, but one that works in opposition to the principles of the university." And that is true. That is very true. It is one thing to, put out a well-grounded, in data, peer-reviewed, publication. But just being a professor and saying that you don't trust climate change data because people on the left are citing it, if you think that treating students with respect by using the pronoun they prefer is some sort of oppression, if you think doxing students is the appropriate response to them criticizing you, you don't belong on a university campus. You just don't. You don't have the intellectual backing to be there. You don't have the moral authority to be there. And you also don't have the self-awareness to be a good employee to treat the customers, the students in this case, with the respect that they deserve. So, yeah, of course he should have had his ass kicked to the curb. Happy that he did. So let's see what our friend of the show, Philip Moriarty, had to say. Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry, guys. You didn't see any of that. My apologies. I just read this to you and I didn't change the screen. So I'm very sorry for that. But this is what it looked like. That must have been boring to watch. Apologies, guys. Here it is. Here's the whole thing. I just read out to you. But you got to watch the cute dog jump up and down. So that had to be good. Alright, so that was the Guardian article. You can go check that out through my bookmarks. Can you guys get to my bookmarks? I don't know. I should probably source this in the channel so people can check it out. But that was it. That was the Guardian article. Now, we're going to look at what? No, not that. Sorry. Right, yes. Philip Moriarty put out a little blog post. Once I've done this, I will check the chat. So, happy now that you can actually see what I'm reading out to you guys. Hour 2, it's tough. Right, so, Philip writes, "Standards at Cambridge just ain't what they used to be. I've been swamped with the day job of late, so my rate of blogging has accordingly dropped substantially. But I woke up this morning and bleary-eyed checked my inbox in Outlook to find, nestling between the usual spam conference invitations from predatory publishers, an email about this Guardian article. Cambridge University rescinds Jordan Peterson invitation. Thanks, Laurie. Peterson, thanks, Laurie. Full stop. I don't know who Laurie is. I don't think it was the author. But anyway, Peterson, to wake up at 6 a.m., you're too kind. And I just can't let this go without a quick post before I get back to the email backlog. Just what the hell was Cambridge thinking? Peterson's pathetically transparent, overwrought, and highly lucrative anti-PC crusades are, of course, entirely at odds with the ethos of Cambridge, and the university staff and students quickly and forcefully pointed this out. But what I can't get my head around is how and why the invitation to Peterson was made in the first place. Of course, now he tried to invite himself. You apply for these fellowships. But he's also probably saying, why did they put it out? One would hope that Cambridge, of all places, would very carefully consider and vet the scholarship of any visiting fellow. Fellowships are generally exceptionally difficult to secure. Did no one involved with inviting Peterson take the time to read and assess his writings and witterings? So in this, it kind of depends on the structure. So I said, in terms of vetting, when you have one of these applications, what they often ask for is your CV, your publications, in peer-reviewed journals, what conferences have you presented to, what books have you written, and those are the sort of metrics that they're looking at. They're not going to check to see if you showed up on, the Australian Broadcasting Company or whatever it is, or you said something else. It's usually a form that you fill out. You apply for it, you put your name, your institution, you put your CV, you put maybe some references of people that you're going to work with at the institution, you put your CV in, and then they might have a process where they go through and they look, if they have three positions and 30 applicants, and they have to whittle it down. But it doesn't mean there's always massive competition. Like maybe there was a fellowship just sort of sitting out that they went, oh, well, we've got this thing going on. If you want to apply for it right now, no one else has applied for it. And maybe we can get you here for a couple months. So while I get the vetting thing, I also think, Philip knows as well, there's already so much admin to do that I can understand why seeing somebody locally who said they were going to sponsor him would just grease the wheels. But he makes a valid point here. I'm not saying his point isn't valid. I'm just saying I get how these kinds of things can slip through the cracks because normally you don't get this kind of backlash. All right, so he says, take this, for example. All right, can we get this bigger? Let's get this bigger. This is why I was saying about Jordan Peterson and pseudoscience. Massive pseudoscience. Right. So this is his figure 9, the regeneration of stability from the domain of chaos. This is right up there with anything Derrida. I mean, this is actually less coherent than Derrida, I think, or Foucault, or any of the postmodernists that he likes to crap on. This is literally less useful than writings by Foucault or Derrida. So he's got here what should be the ideal future inside of this. It looks like it was drawn in a Word document. It looked like you took a Word document and you just I've done these kind of things too with my qualitative data where I sort of had to group concepts together. But I only put one idea. If you've seen my rape culture thing, right? You see that I have it sort of set up, but this is just, again, talk about figures you can't understand what's going on. So it says, what should be the ideal future? Then it says hope and pleasure, which, I'm sorry, the directionality of this is swapped. I have to blow this up even more. That's what she said. No, I can't get any bigger early, I guess. All right. So this looks like you got predicted outcome and unpredicted outcome. And the unpredicted outcome leads to threat and anxiety. And threat says something, and then anxiety says hope. And then the predicted outcome is promise, which leads to hope and pleasure. And then positive outcome is linking up continue sequence to what should be the ideal future, whereas unpredicted outcome says generate, choose new sequence. And then there's the what is, the unbearable present. So there's the unbearable present, and that present, we also have an unbearable president, a planned sequence of behavior. Okay, so the unbearable present, you're here now. We're working our way through this diagram. And then you get a planned sequence of behavior, but then there's a predicted outcome and an unpredicted outcome. And the unpredicted outcome is bad things, but also good things. And the predicted outcome has only good things, not bad things. And then both of those lead to what should be the ideal future, either with continue sequence or generate choose new sequence. And all that is completely separate from this other thing. So that's linked to chaos, the unknown, arrow from this process of whatever. Disintegration and descent is going to chaos, but then from chaos goes anomalous and information to this process. And then from chaos, there's also the link to reintegration and ascent. So here, I guess you got, look, we've got square version of what is and square version of what should be. But now in this important diagram, they're in circles. So now what is the unbearable present, which is also what's in here, and you get your planned sequence of behavior, and you get your predicted outcome and unpredicted outcome just the same, and you get your continue sequence is the same, and your generate choose new sequence is the same, hope and pleasure and promise, and threat so wait a minute. These two diagrams are identical except for the fact, from what I can see, is that this what should be and what is are in square boxes. And this what should be and what is are in oval circles. Don't you see it, guys? Don't you see it? Don't you see with clarity how he's mapped out, what was this again? The regeneration of stability from the domain. Okay. Oh, God. This is garbage. It's nonsense. You're literally... it's literally the exact same thing, except with different squares. Honestly, Derrida is more coherent than this. He is trying to look smart. Oh, yes, he is. But you know what? When somebody actually, this is the problem with trying to look smart, is when people work their way through what you're presenting, you get exposed. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's amazing. You know what? Someone pointed out this is worse or as bad as the PragerU stuff, right? With the PragerU stuff, it was without context. Like they just put a bar and lines and words, which was unfathomable. But this is unfathomable in a different way because he's got so many words. And I guess the idea is if you've read his entire chapter and you've studied everything he's ever said, ever, and know all his works inside and out, and are a total believer in fruit-face theory, then when you see this, you see the truth behind what he's trying to represent, which apparently, is that life is, the regeneration of chaos is different because of squares versus ovals. Again, a figure should be clear. Let's just take another. How do you spell hierarchy? It's with the I, isn't it? Let's take Adler's hierarchy of needs. First result. Why? Because it's such a useful figure for understanding a lot of complex ideas at once. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually a pretty extensive theory. He talks about the idea that there are different types of needs that we have as human beings. You can see they're classified here as a basic need, then a psychological need, and a self-fulfillment. And these are rank ordered. If you can't breathe, you don't care about how good you feel about yourself. You want to live, right? So Maslow's hierarchy of needs represents We have a base core of needs that have to be met before anything else can. If you're not able to breathe or eat, none of the other things matter. So our physiological needs are at the core of our experience: food, water, warmth, and rest. Next after that, is security, safety. Why? Because if you can eat and you're not gonna choke or drown, or you're starving to death, you also don't want to be attacked. So that's not as immediate, but of a higher order. If you are both, able to get your basic needs met and you feel secure, you are then in a place to worry about or feel or focus on or have mental space to think about your relationships with other human beings, because we are social animals. So next would be intimate relationships. Then depending on that, how those are going, the next sort of need we have, but is one that can be, as I say, put off or subsumed or whatever, because if it's not as necessary to our existence, is esteem. We want to be respected in our communities. We want to have people trust us. We want to have a good reputation. We don't want to be mocked. We don't want to be feel like losers. Prestige and a feeling of accomplishment. And then the last thing, in order to be what Adler considered was a self-actualized person, is having all of those needs being sorted out. You got your physiological needs met, your safety needs are met, you have relationships, you have a feeling of accomplishment and prestige, and that then you're in a place or in a space to actually fulfill your own potential, to do creative work, to do art, to think outside the box. But if you can't breathe, or if you feel like you're being stalked because you are being stalked, you're not going to be in a headspace to have that self-actualization, right? This is really complicated theory. A lot of different stages, a lot of rationale, a lot of different elements. Yet look at how well organized, how thoughtful. Maslow's hierarchy, I said Adler initially, and I was sorry about that. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Adler also talked about self-actualization in non-falsifiable ways, which is why I mixed them up. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Right? A lot of information presented in a very clear way. Now look at this. In all honesty, if you could have literally just put this part of it by changing this and this, it's literally the same thing. Anyway, it's garbage. Enough of making fun of this stupid, chaotic figure. Philip writes, from his seminal Maps of Meaning, Cambridge took that seriously. Over the years, I've received green ink letters and emails that rank at the top of the Bayes scale, make much more sense. I don't know, that must be like a science joke I don't get. Or what about Peterson's lobster nonsense, as, for example, forensically dissected by Bailey Steinworth, a third-year PhD researcher, in her masterful takedown last year? Here's Steinworth's closing argument, and Philip urges us all to read the entire piece. I will also just here open it up in a new link so y'all can see that. You want to see oh, Washington Post. Good. I have a subscription to that. There you go. Put that in the chat for you guys. Right, so this is the full piece he's referring to. But her closing statement. No biologist would argue with Peterson that dominance hierarchies have probably existed for a long time. But it's also true that plenty of animals live together without the need to assert dominance over one another. It seems as if his discussion of lobsters illustrates far more about his own worldview than it does about human behavior. But he's a psychologist, not me. Philip writes, Peterson's lobster fixation is a fantastic example of what Feynman... I did this thing where I don't know what I'm doing to make the screen bigger. I had this problem with Kevin, if you guys remember. The screen would randomly size up, and that's a bit frustrating when you're trying to read. I'll figure out what I'm doing, the sequence of events eventually, but I haven't put together the logic of causation yet. Of what Feynman described as cargo cult science, all of the hallmarks of science, but lacking the essential objectivity and self-critical reasoning. But yet this level of scholarship is good enough to warrant a visiting fellowship at one of Britain's most august seats of learning. And the less said about Peterson's willfully uninformed playing to the gallery when it comes to climate change, the better. It takes a minimal amount of background reading about Peterson to discern the Emperor's New Clothes character of his appeal. It's rather depressing that academics of the caliber of those who lecture in the hallowed halls of Cambridge couldn't manage this modicum of research. As a starting point, I thoroughly recommend Nathan J. Robinson's profile of Peterson, The Intellect We Deserve, or for a more pithy insight into Peterson's style over substance shtick, Private Eye nailed it in this parody. All right, so I'm worried about, I'm just going to put these links up that Philip gives us. There's the current affairs one. Boop. The Intellect We Deserve from basically this time last year, just a year and 10 days ago. So you guys can go check this out. Peterson's popularity is a sign of a deeply impoverished political and intellectual landscape. Ouch. I mean, true, but... and the Private Eye parody. Philip's a big fan of Private Eye. He does read that and quote from it a lot. He enjoys it. Private Eye parodies Peterson's purple prose. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. Yes. You can fool some of the people some of the time, and that's enough to make a decent living. W.C. Fields. Alright. So it says, I got the new issue of Private Eye today and was tickled by their effortless lampooning of Jordan Peterson's tediously overwrought writing, just like the worst of the postmodernists he so despises, and Alan Sokal so memorably ridiculed. Peterson's needlessly ornate, florid, and flaccid prose is a triumph of poor style over substance. I love Philip Moriarty. There is a way to you just dress people down without insulting them. This is what Carl hasn't figured out yet. That you can completely decimate someone in a polite tone by accurately pointing out their failings. And the reason why it's so devastating isn't because you are trying to be cruel, which is what Carl basically tries to do. It's because you're summing so cogently, accurately, and in a pithy way all of their flaws that people recognize the truth of it. All right. So let's see what they have. Oh, I have to reduce this down. And then we're going to need to get going. I have a feeling, oh my gosh, yes. Got to call my parents at this time every week. All right. Jordan Peterson. Again, this is the Private Eye parody. This isn't him. Or maybe it is. I don't know. We'll have to see if we can tell. Who said this, Peterson or Private Eye? Meaning is what emerges beautifully and profoundly, like a newly formed rosebud opening itself out of nothingness into the light of sun and God. But as we bask in meaning's rays, we must check that the ice on which we are skating is solid. When ice melts, the unwary skater falls into the fast-flowing water beneath. Some people argue that life is complicated enough without rules. The hard-won lesson life has taught me, hewn by the timbers of decades, is that it is a wise rule and a good rule to hold back from skating when there is no ice visible on the water. Yeah. And indeed, thus endeth the lesson. Yeah, that sounds like Peterson garbage. And we heard it earlier, so we know it's right. All right. Where do you get? It's very worrying indeed that the standards of scholarship required of a visiting academic at what is arguably Britain's most prestigious university has slipped that low. All right. Thank you, Philip. We appreciate that. Now, in fairness, we are going to look at Peterson whining about the offer being rescinded. And again, I mentioned this too. I want to get going, so I'll say this pretty quickly. Then I'll check the chat. I'll say this, then I'll read the Peterson thing, then I'll check the chat, then we'll end. A bookseller in New Zealand decided after the mass shooting, they weren't going to stock the Peterson maps of meanings, or 12 rules. 12 rules book. And someone contacted them saying, I looked for this book on your website or in your stores or whatever, and I couldn't find it. And this email is coming back. Sorry, 1 second. All right. The email reply said, we've decided not to stock this book anymore. And really dumbass people have said this is banning. Like, they say that not offering a book for sale is banning. I think I saw Tim Pool, and talking about idiots. Tim Pool, New Zealand, I don't know if Peterson. He went on and said they were banning this. Yeah, look at this. Jordan Peterson book banned by New Zealand distributors. Here's why Tim Pool this is an example of why Tim Pool is not only not a journalist, he actually doesn't understand what words mean. When a private company does not stock a book or makes a corporate decision to not sell a product, that's not banning. Banning is when someone with authority or power, like a school district or a government, tells you you can't access a book or read it or sell it or buy it. That's banning. And they talk this, people like fake centrists who are actually far-right propagandists masquerading as somehow neutral. They say that when we call people Nazis, we're devaluing the word. To compare a private company in a capitalist framework not offering a product to being banned, you are obliterating the meaning of the word or using it with such deliberate cynicism that your intention is to undermine the meaning of the word. When they say that, if anyone is saying that Peterson was deplatformed over this, that would be another example of misusing a word. When you apply for a fellowship and you get it and then they change their mind, it might be a disappointment. It might be embarrassing. What it's not is deplatforming, because Jordan Peterson is not entitled to a visiting professorship. And so you can't be deplatformed when you weren't entitled to the platform anyway. They basically realized he was total skis and didn't want to hang out with him anymore. They didn't want to associate with his skeeziness. And that's not deplatforming. Those are called consequences for being a bigot in public. Deal with it. Put on your big boy pants. Take responsibility for what you said. And acknowledge and just realize, Professor Peterson, if you're going to say terrible things about women longing for brutal male domination, and you are going to refuse to honor the basic dignity of trans people, there are consequences for those actions, those speech acts that you have. And one of them is public shunning. So suck it up, because we're not going to normalize your bigotry. Okay. Now, being Jordan Peterson, look at this. Look at this. I'm not going to read all this, you guys. I'm not going to read all of it because he is a big, whiny baby. If you want to read the whole thing, I'll put it in the chat. Bam. Do you guys like that? Do you like when I put the links in the chat? And it actually kind of is nice, because if I start doing this, when I have an article like this, if I just put the links in the chat at the time I use them, it means I don't have to go back to the video afterwards and then find all the links that I cited and then put them in the description box. Okay, that's totally lazy, but maybe it'll work. So he's basically whining, and there was... Here we go. I'm just going to do the last bit because we don't have time to go through his whole piece. You can go through it. So this is Jordan Peterson. You see, it matters whether people around the world understand these ancient stories. It matters deeply. No, it doesn't. So I'm just going to tell you, whatever he says is really important. It's not. There is nothing that comes out of the School of Divinity or Faculty of Divinity that is important anymore. And it hasn't since about the 18th century. Since we moved over to more of a humanist, we drifted toward a humanist outlook and a humanist framework, and then eventually became secular in our epistemology, the contributions of the Faculty of Divinity don't impact people's lives. So, here we go. Okay, I'm backing up a little bit. it's not going to make much of a difference to my future in some sense. I have more opportunities in the moment than I keep track of, let alone, say, capitalize on. Is that like the failed business project you had with, you didn't capitalize on your failed business project with Dave Rubin to provide an alternative to Patreon, where y'all quit Patreon saying, we're going to start this other thing. Whatever happened to that? All the people were like, yeah, start Shitlordicon, start Hatreon 2.0, so we can give you our money and then you can attract all the white nationalists too. Blah, blah, blah. I will produce lectures on Exodus, whether or not they recur in the Canada, whatever. And I think it's unfortunate authorities at Divinity are kowtowing. Oh. I think it is deeply unfortunate that the authorities at the Divinity School in Cambridge decided that kowtowing to an ill-informed, ignorant, and ideologically addled mob. Wait a minute, Peterson, why are you talking about your own fans? The idea that the mob that calls him out on his climate change denialism are ill-informed and ignorant and ideologically addled. This from the man who said, I'm going to oppose a bill that would expand marriage equality in Australia because this idiot on the internet told me that the cultural Marxists were behind it. And people at Cambridge are ill-informed and ignorant and ideologically addled? You were the one, wait, Jordan Peterson puts out the private, the Facebook account of people to his Twitter fans, but they're an ignorant mob? Not your ideologically addled mob. Trump participating in an extensive online experiment in mass Christian and psychological education. Given the continued decline of church attendance, I'm happy about that. The rise in atheistic or agnostic sentiment, I'm happy about that. You know why? Because atheism and agnosticism have a basis of questioning the idea that have a basis of doubt. Atheists are atheists because they want to be convinced of the evidence. Agnostics aren't sure. It's a position of doubt, not blind faith. And so those are good things. When people let go of blind faith, we see that people who are scientifically minded, college educated, they're the least likely to like Trump or to support Trump. People who are highly Christian with lower education, like high school levels, blind faith. And the increasing irrelevance of theological education, because there's nothing empirical about theology, it's all just made up bullshit on top of bullshit, and the collapse in interest in such matters among young people, wiser and more profound decisions might have been made. I'm curious now, what is this? I'm curious as to what he wants to do for his research, but we're running late already, so I'll have to check that later. You see, it matters whether people around the world understand these ancient stories. It deeply matters. We are becoming unmoored because we no longer share the structure of these stories under good. It's as if he thinks that if we don't keep ourselves trapped in Bronze Age thinking, in patriarchal, outdated, pre-scientific value structures, that we're somehow losing our humanity. And I don't think that's what is happening. I think the stories change because who we are as humans have changed, and the stories that used to underpin society and justify it no longer work. They fail. The story of Abraham isn't compelling now. We just look at it in horror. It doesn't look like an act of faith thing to us. It looks like God asking for a human sacrifice. The idea of hell, all this stuff, in terms of an afterlife. So, well, he's probably going deeper into like the chaos and order of the universe, and he's an old man who sees change, and he's freaking out. That's kind of what I'm getting out of this. It is psychologically destabilizing. It's producing a pathological and desperate nihilism that is increasingly common, and at the same time, a pronounced proclivity for the ideological certainty that mimics but cannot replace true religious belief. Right. So again, nonsense. We have pathological and desperate nihilism. Nihilism, let's just look this word up. I didn't want to go this long. The rejection of all religions and moral principles, the belief that life is meaningless. So there's a rejection of all religious and moral principles. But he says, at the same time, where is it? Right. For ideological certainty that mimics but cannot replace true religious belief. So we're rejecting rejection of all religious and moral principles. but at the same time, it's also becoming common that there's a pronounced proclivity for the ideological certainty that mimics but cannot replace true religious belief. Maybe in his head, this stuff makes sense. But if you look at skepticism, healthy skepticism is an alternative to true religious belief. And it's a healthier one, because skepticism is always leaving room for doubt and growth, whereas blind faith to religious belief, you're shutting down what knowledge is. Both consequences are bound to be, as the evidence certainly indicates, no evidence provided, by the way, divisive and truly dangerous. You know what's divisive and truly dangerous? Telling an audience of young men that women long for brutal male domination. You know what's dangerous is modeling and normalizing the idea that women want totalitarian domination over them, or that the way to resolve conflict for men is violence is an acceptable form of conflict resolution. If two men can't come to an agreement about a point, according to Jordan Peterson, they can fight it out, and that threat of violence is very important for male relationships. And because men don't have that same ability to threaten women, he's defenseless in the face of critique from a woman who disagrees with him. Sorry, I got off on a tangent there. I think the Faculty of Divinity made a serious error of judgment in rescinding their offer to me. No, they didn't. And I'm speaking about those unnamed person who made that specific decision. I think they handled publicizing the rescindment in a matter could have been more narcissistic, self-congratulatory, and devious. Wow, I think they handled publicizing the rescindment in a manner that could have been hardly more narcissistic, self-congratulatory, and devious. We saw this. We saw this tweet, you guys. I don't know where exactly it is in my thing here, but I know it's not that far away. It's literally a 2-line or 1-line sentence. This is it. This is what he's complaining about. This one sentence with a main and subordinate clause. This from the man who, doxed students because they criticized him. What a piece of shit this guy is. All right. I presume in any case they regard that faith in their propaganda-addled souls... I believe that the parties don't give a damn about the perilous decline of Christianity. Hashtag logical fallacy from Peterson. That's ad hom. Appeal to motives. Logical fallacy. Mr. Professor. Appeal to motive. Logical fallacy. I believe the parties in question don't give a damn about the perilous decline of Christianity. He's assuming that the decline of Christianity is perilous. So he's already biased. And I presume in any case that they regard that faith in their propaganda-addled souls as the ultimate manifestation of the oppressive Western patriarchy, despite their hypothetical allegiance to their own discipline. No one said shit about patriarchy in that tweet, Jordan Peterson. What are you talking about, little man-child? You're just going to throw out buzzwords. Oh, I got held accountable for my shitty public behavior. So who's to blame? Ooh, it's the nihilists and the atheists and the agnostics and the School of Divinity for not adhering to my view of the importance of the decline of Christianity. I think that's no bloody wonder. I hate when he uses bloody. He sounds so shit when he uses the term bloody. He's not British. It doesn't come across as natural at all. That faith is declining, and with it the values of the West as it fragments. Bullshit, motherfucker. Bullshit. This idea that you have to have a blind faith or any kind of faith in order for humanism. The West isn't built on faith. Western values are not built on religious values. They are not, because religions don't value all peoples equally. And you can say that they do, but hate the sinner, love the sin is not about equality. It's about putting people in different categories. You're a person, you don't have sin. You're a person, you do have sin. Right? That has nothing to do with democracy or Western values. Western values are humanist, secular. They're about separation of religion from government, separation of theocracy from rule. They are about optimizing individuals' lives, and that includes providing them a community and a world and a society in which we use people's proper pronouns, in which we don't view women as secretly wanting to be thumped by men or raped by men or dominated by men, or in a country, in a nation, the values of the West would embrace science on climate change and the human rights, and the obvious human right of marriage, regardless of whom you love. You know, when it comes to, like, you know, I don't have a problem with polygamous relation, like with more than one person in a marriage. I mean, marriage is a social construct anyway. But all of this stuff that he's talking about, lamenting, it's secularism and humanism that underpin Western values. And if anything, faith is a direct threat, because faith teaches you to not honor other people's rights. And that's why we have a problem with people who see themselves as Christian first, as American second, because their first loyalty is to Jesus and their theocracy, their coming kingdom, and not to their fellow citizens. That's why they don't want to pay taxes, you know, because they don't care if other people starve or suffer, because they're getting theirs and they're saved, and screw the rest of the world. All right, let me wrap this up. I wish them the continued decline in relevance over the next few decades that they deeply and profoundly and diligently work for and deserve. Meow! Meow, meow, meow. Catty bitch, Jordy. So catty. Is this the 12-step you want to model how to be a bigger man? Really? This is how you are a professional? Is you go petty and you wish them their, you know, like, oh, I wish them the decline and all that kind of stuff. You can't possibly rise above this. You can't possibly model how to gracefully take a rejection. Oh no, you gotta like man baby this out and whine and cry from your crib and your pram and throw out little insults and hurl all kinds of hate because people held you accountable for your bullshit comments and actions and the way that you talk about other people. Oh, this is so tasty. Watching you get rejected, watching Peterson get rejected from the hallowed halls of Cambridge. It hurts. Obviously, it hurts him. It really, really hurts him. He's humiliated. Oh, that's yummy. Oh, that bitterness. It gives it such depth of flavor. All that bitterness. That hint of bitterness toward the end. You can really feel it coming out. Oh, karma. I do love cause and effect. All right. So, now I can try to wrap this up. Gone way longer than I expected. Thank you guys for hanging around with me. Let's look at cute puppies. And I will have a look at the chat. So I see a couple of people tagging me into stuff already. I'm going to kind of scroll back a little bit. I'm not quite sure how far back I should go. So if there's something you really want me to respond to in the next 5 minutes, retype it. Copy and paste from your earlier one. Layers don't need to be pyramids. Okay. Don't people feel hierarchies are pyramid-shaped? Ron Swanson had a pyramid for greatness. Innuendo Studios showed a pyramid for capitalism, pyramids. All right, so there's a discussion about the format of the presentation of Maslow's, not Adler's. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. I'm just going to go down and start reading things people tag me into, unless 250's got a big, like, question up front. Ancient stories, even so. King John says at Kristi, WTF ancient stories, even theological education is an issue, cause it's based on nonsense and spreading only one faith, monotheistic Judeo-Christian faith. Hashtag facts. I get the old man terrified of modernity vibe from his book. Yeah, woman's change, all that, full fear of anything. Yeah. I think for certain kind of men who got by on being men, having to compete with people who had to come up through merit is very threatening. It's why he wants to protect the power of the penis. Hilarious, Tuplexy. Yada, yada, yada. All right. King John says, my brother views this different because he's a classics and biblical historian. Jordan is spreading white nationalism in this point because remember Christianity versus Muslims. I don't have a problem teaching about the history of Christianity and the works of it and its influence on, holding back knowledge and the kinds of knowledge it produced and its place in world history. But you can't teach, but there shouldn't be a normative assumption that this is the default worldview. Not in an academic setting. You can't. You can't say Christianity or monotheism, these are the right things that our society need to be doing in order to be prosperous, because that's normative. It's not just descriptive. He is doing the kind of indoctrination with that approach that he accuses others of doing. When people teach Marxism in economics courses or in a political economy course or just in a politics course alongside Rawls and Hobbes and Locke and Habermas and a whole bunch of other political theorists, whatever. Marx is there because he had a framework of thinking about the world. It's not indoctrination, but Peterson wants to indoctrinate people. 250 says, have you watched Stranger Things? When I saw the trailer for the new season, I realized you were born the same time the main characters were supposed to have been. I did watch Stranger Things, loved seasons 1 and 2, is it? Yeah, and I'm a little older than that. I would have been growing up, 1980s. I would have been growing up. I would have been about the same age as they are in that show. That's about right. Kristi Winter says, Jordan B. Peterson. Oh, yeah. Resent being a member of a species ruled by a female queen. Matriarchy. Oh, I have to do it on this hand, otherwise you guys won't be able to see it in camera. Yeah, I think so. I think this would be Jordan B. Peterson's existential fear, is the fact that he's part of a community that's dominated by women. Or a queen is a matriarchy. And that's very, very oppressive to him. He's very scared of that. Very scared. Let's see. I love that. Sand County Almanac was by Aldo Leopold. Yes, thank you very much. I haven't thought of that name or that book in quite a while ago, but you are exactly right. 110% Tom McDonald. Ding, ding, ding. Memento Mori, I didn't say hello to you. You're right, because I didn't see you. There's a lot of people in the chat. This has been quite the extravaganza tonight. Is it night where you are? It's night where, it's day where I am. And people are saying goodbye already. Are you on Game of Thrones? We are. Oh yeah, like Magic Mondays, because remember I live in Germany, and so we don't get, like, I have to find alternative modes of consuming Game of Thrones, so it's usually the Monday after it's been released, and I am looking forward to it. I think here's on the Game of Thrones thing. Sorry, Jordan B. Peterson's going to sit over here and look sad because he's been rejected from Cambridge, so he's just going to sit on my shoulder and look sad. There he goes, head down. Rejected. What I think is going to be very difficult with Game of Thrones and the ending is the format Martin chose was to subvert all of the kind of stereotypes of the fantasy archetypes. And that works really well for pushing the audience into unexpected places. You can't predict the narrative once you realize that the rules don't apply anymore. And it's a very clever idea. It's a very compelling idea. The question is, how do you resolve a story that is based on undermining the notion of the archetypal ending? So, I think when I think about the end of the Game of Thrones, it's all about, I'll just take off the B now. It's all about the subversion of expectation. But at the end, I expect things to be resolved. I expect there to be an ending. And the ending I expect is some sort of Daenerys and Jon get together, or this happens with Jaime and Cersei, or whatever the resolutions are traditional. You see what I mean? They're a traditional story ending. But that goes against the entire ethos of the series. So that to me will be the interesting thing. If they give us an ending that we'll find satisfying, considering they can't give us the typical happy ending. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing with Game of Thrones. Question: you heard Clarence Thomas has come out against legal aid. No, but that doesn't surprise me. Clarence Thomas is a piece of shit. Has been for decades. And this is, stacking the courts in order to to undermine democracy is what conservatives, the Republicans, are all about. It's 12:45 a.m. here. Ooh. Yada yada yada. Martin, blah blah blah. Kristi, what I find hilarious is that Jordan brings up family units, yet loves bringing up mythology, even though the Babylonian gods, Greek gods, Norse gods have the most dysfunctional families. Well put. Yeah, that's very true. He's always going on about how the nuclear family, but that also involves a penis. Has to involve a penis for it to be a nuclear family. I might have said that wrong now. All right. Seeing the end for last one. I'm taking last comment here. I feel bad for Martin. People keep asking about social justice stuff in interviews, and he doesn't know what to say because he's an old white guy. Hey, the Cognitive Society. Hey, TCS. We should produce a peaceful ending for Trump to watch so he doesn't become Fire and Fury Man. Yeah. No shit on that. Alright, guys. I'm already late on getting call. Oh my gosh, 3 hours. I'm already well late on making my family calls for this Sunday. Thank you so much. I think next week we're going to start with the first episode of Weekend Winters. Over the course of the show, I've decided, as much as I like Coffee with Kristi, it can be maybe a subset when I invite guests on. Have Coffee with Kristi on Weekend Winters, and then I can do Weekday Winters as well. So that will be the show from next Sunday. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Very much appreciate it, putting up with all my OBS learnings and just ragging on Jordan B. Peterson for an hour, which I felt is overdue. I haven't really broken him down a bit. So see you in a few hours, Tom. See you guys in a few hours. We're going to be doing our patron hangout tonight. You can check the channel for that. Otherwise, until next time, you guys, I have been Kristi. Try that with a T. I've been Kristi. You guys in the chat over here have been awesome. People watching in the future, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time and attention and hanging out with me all the way to the end of the video. So, till next time, guys. And I'm just seeing the pug again. Sorry, let's just put the pug on to end, because that's nice. Perfect. From me and the happy pug, catch you later. Bye.